Giant Kodiak Bear, mauls 5 campers, August 28, 2025. Giant Kodiak Bear, mauls 5 campers, August 28, 2025. The morning of August 25, 2025, dawned crisp and clear over Kodiak Island, Alaska, as 5 friends from Seattle prepared for what they believed would be the adventure of a lifetime. Jennifer Lopez, a 29-year-old marine biologist with the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, had been planning this expedition to Kodiak Island for over 2 years. Her passion for wildlife photography and her expertise in marine ecosystems had drawn her to this remote corner of Alaska, where the world's largest brown bears roamed freely across untamed wilderness. Standing 5 feet 6 inches with auburn hair perpetually pulled back in a practical ponytail, Jennifer possessed the kind of quiet confidence that came from years of fieldwork in challenging environments. She had earned her PhD from the University of Washington studying salmon migration patterns, work that had taken her to remote locations throughout the Pacific Northwest, but never anywhere as isolated as Kodiak Island. Marcus Taylor, 30, served as the group's unofficial leader and Jennifer's longtime boyfriend since their college days at Western Washington University. At 6 feet 2 inches, with the lean build of a dedicated rock climber, Marcus worked as a wilderness guide for Cascade Adventure Company, leading backpacking expeditions throughout the Olympic and Cascade mountain ranges. His weathered hands and sun-darkened skin spoke to countless hours spent outdoors, and his methodical approach to trip planning had earned him a reputation for keeping clients safe in challenging terrain. Marcus possessed an encyclopedic knowledge of wilderness survival techniques, having spent 3 summers working for the Forest Service in fire prevention and another 2 years as a search and rescue volunteer with Whatcom County Mountain Rescue. The Kodiak expedition represented the culmination of his dream to experience true Alaskan wilderness, away from the increasingly crowded trails of the lower 48 states. Sarah Chen, 28, rounded out the core trio as Jennifer's best friend since graduate school and a fellow scientist working as a research coordinator at the Seattle Aquarium. Born to Taiwanese immigrants who had settled in Bellevue in the 1980s, Sarah possessed an analytical mind that perfectly complemented her adventurous spirit. At 5 feet 4 inches, with long black hair she often braided for outdoor activities, Sarah had followed Jennifer on numerous camping trips throughout Washington and Oregon, developing her own passion for wildlife photography along the way. Her background in marine ecology and statistics made her invaluable for data collection on their expeditions, and she approached wilderness travel with the same methodical precision she applied to her research. Sarah had been documenting their adventures through detailed journal entries and photographs for years, creating what amounted to a comprehensive record of Pacific Northwest ecosystems they had explored together. The group had expanded for the Kodiak adventure to include 2 additional friends from their broader social circle. David Kim, 31, worked as a software engineer for Microsoft, but had grown up in rural Montana, giving him practical hunting and fishing skills that complemented the group's scientific expertise. Standing 6 feet even with broad shoulders and calloused hands that revealed his comfort with both keyboards and outdoor equipment, David served as the group's designated hunter and fishing specialist. His parents had immigrated from South Korea in the 1970s, settling in Billings, where his father worked as a mechanical engineer for Burlington Northern Railroad. David had learned to hunt elk and deer from his American-born neighbors, developing a respect for wildlife that aligned perfectly with the conservation ethics shared by Jennifer and Sarah. His practical knowledge of game processing and meat preservation would prove essential for their planned 2-week expedition in bear country. The 5th member of their party was Amanda Rodriguez, 27, a freelance outdoor gear reviewer and former collegiate athlete who had competed in cross-country running for the University of Oregon. Her petite 5'2" frame belied remarkable endurance, and an almost supernatural ability to carry heavy packs across difficult terrain. Born and raised in Portland to Mexican-American parents who owned a small restaurant in southeast Portland, Amanda had discovered her love for wilderness travel during college, using running as a gateway to hiking and eventually backpacking. Her job reviewing gear for outdoor magazines had given her access to cutting-edge equipment and deep knowledge of what worked in extreme conditions. Amanda approached wilderness travel with the disciplined mindset of an athlete, maintaining detailed logs of mileage, elevation gain, and equipment performance that provided valuable data for the group's planning purposes. Their destination was a remote section of the Kodiak National Wildlife Refuge, specifically the Larsen Bay drainage system on the island's southwestern coast. This area represented some of the most pristine brown bear habitat remaining in North America, with an estimated population density of 1 bear per square mile during salmon runs. The Larsen Bay watershed encompassed over 200 square miles of varied terrain, from tidal meadows and salmon streams near the coast to alpine tundra and glacial valleys in the interior mountains. The area's remoteness had preserved it from significant human impact, creating an ecosystem where Kodiak brown bears could exhibit natural behaviors without habituation to humans. Kodiak brown bears, scientifically classified as Ursus arctos middendorfi, represent the largest subspecies of brown bear in the world. Adult males commonly weigh between 600 and 1,000 pounds, with exceptional individuals reaching 1,500 pounds or more during peak salmon feeding periods. Female bears typically range from 400 to 600 pounds. Still massive by the standards of other North American bear populations. The island's unique ecosystem, dominated by abundant salmon runs and rich berry patches, supports these enormous bears throughout their active season, from April through October. The bear's size is directly related to the exceptional quality of their food sources, particularly the annual salmon runs that provide concentrated protein and fat necessary for surviving Alaska's harsh winters. The group's planning had begun in earnest, following Jennifer's attendance at the International Conference on Bear Research and Management in Anchorage in September 2023. During the conference, she had met Dr. William Holbrook, a wildlife biologist with the Alaska Department of Fish and Game, who had spent over 15 years studying Kodiak brown bears. Dr. Holbrook's presentation on bear behavior during salmon runs had captivated Jennifer, particularly his description of how individual bears develop distinct fishing strategies and territorial behaviors around productive streams. His research had documented several bears in the Larsen Bay area that exceeded normal size parameters, including one male designated as Bear 482 that had been estimated at over 1,200 pounds based on photographic analysis and track measurements. The conversation with Dr. Holbrook had planted the seeds for what would become their expedition. Jennifer learned that accessing the Larsen Bay area required floatplane transportation and careful coordination with the refuge management to ensure compliance with wildlife protection regulations. The area's remoteness meant that visitors needed to be completely self-sufficient, as no emergency services existed within 100 miles of their planned camping locations. Dr. Holbrook had emphasized the critical importance of proper food storage and bear safety protocols, noting that the Larsen Bay bears showed little fear of humans due to minimal prior contact, but also displayed unpredictable behavior patterns during late summer feeding periods. Marcus had taken responsibility for the logistical planning, spending months researching transportation options, permit requirements, and equipment needs for their 2-week expedition. The complexity of accessing Kodiak Island wilderness areas required coordination with Kodiak Air Service, one of only 3 charter operators licensed to land in the refuge waters. Flight scheduling depended entirely on weather conditions, which could change rapidly in the Gulf of Alaska. potentially stranding visitors for days beyond their planned departure dates. The group had budgeted for potential delays and purchased comprehensive travel insurance that covered emergency evacuation, understanding that rescue operations in the Kodiak wilderness could cost tens of thousands of dollars. Their equipment selection had involved extensive research and significant financial investment, as the remote location and unpredictable weather demanded the highest quality gear available. Marcus had coordinated with his contacts at outdoor equipment companies to secure demo gear for testing, allowing the group to evaluate performance before committing to purchases. Their shelter system consisted of two four-season mountaineering tents rated for extreme weather conditions, along with a large tarp shelter for cooking and gear storage during extended rain periods. Each person carried a sleeping system rated to -20 degrees Fahrenheit, understanding that late August temperatures in the area could drop to -20 degrees Fahrenheit, near freezing, during clear nights. Food storage presented the most critical safety consideration for their expedition, as improper techniques could attract bears and create dangerous situations. The group had invested in multiple bear-proof food containers certified by the Interagency Grizzly Bear Committee, along with a sophisticated rope and pulley system for hanging food caches in areas where suitable trees existed. Their food selection prioritized calorie density and minimal scent production, avoiding foods known to attract bears, while ensuring adequate nutrition for the physical demands of wilderness travel. Marcus had calculated their daily caloric needs based on expected activity levels and had packed a 20% buffer to account for increased energy expenditure in cold conditions. The journey to Kodiak Island began on Saturday, August 23rd, with an Alaska Airlines flight from Seattle to Anchorage, followed by a connecting flight to Kodiak Airport. The commercial portion of their travel proceeded smoothly, with clear weather providing spectacular views of the Alaska Range and Gulf of Alaska during their approach to Kodiak. The island appeared below them as a vast expanse of green mountains, rising directly from steel-gray ocean waters, with few signs of human habitation outside the city of Kodiak itself. The landscape's scale impressed even Marcus, whose extensive climbing experience had exposed him to dramatic mountain scenery throughout the western United States and western Canada. Upon arrival in Kodiak, the group spent their first night at the Shelikoff Lodge, using the time to conduct final gear checks and coordinate with their charter pilot, Captain Robert Moose Morrison. Captain Morrison, a 58-year-old Alaska native with over 30 years of flying experience in the region, operated a restored de Havilland Beaver floatplane that had become legendary among wildlife photographers and researchers for its ability to access remote locations. Morrison's weather-beaten face and careful speech patterns reflected decades of making split-second decisions in challenging conditions, and his reputation for safety had made him the preferred pilot for scientific expeditions throughout the Kodiak archipelago. During their planning meeting at Morrison's hangar, the pilot had reviewed weather forecasts and discussed contingency procedures for their pickup scheduled for September 8th. Morrison emphasized the importance of maintaining flexible departure dates, explaining that late summer storm systems could develop rapidly in the Gulf of Alaska and make flying impossible for days at a time. The group established primary and alternate pickup locations, along with emergency communication protocols using satellite devices they would carry throughout their expedition. Morrison's extensive knowledge of the Larsen Bay area proved invaluable, as he had been landing in the region for over 2 decades and could provide specific details about terrain features, water sources, and suitable camping locations. The weather forecast for their expedition period showed typical late August conditions, with daytime temperatures ranging from 45 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit and nighttime lows potentially dropping to the mid-30s. Morrison explained that the region's weather patterns were heavily influenced by maritime conditions, with frequent fog banks and sudden rain squalls that could reduce visibility to near zero within minutes. The group's planned camping location near the mouth of Larsen Creek offered protection from prevailing winds, but remained exposed to rapid weather changes that characterized the area. Morrison recommended establishing their base camp on elevated ground at least 200 yards from the creek to minimize bear encounters while maintaining access to fresh water. Sunday, August 24th, dawned clear and calm, providing ideal conditions for their flight into the wilderness. The group assembled at Morrison's hangar at 7 a.m., conducting final weight calculations for their gear and reviewing safety procedures for the floatplane flight. Morrison's pre-flight inspection revealed no mechanical issues, and weather reports showed favorable conditions throughout their planned route to Larsen Bay. The Beaver's cargo capacity allowed them to transport all their equipment in a single flight, eliminating the need for multiple trips that could complicate their schedule and increase costs. The flight from Kodiak to Larsen Bay covered approximately 85 miles of spectacular wilderness scenery, taking them over mountainous terrain and pristine watersheds that showed no signs of human impact. Morrison followed the island's southwestern coastline, pointing out geographical features and wildlife sightings during the 40-minute flight. The group observed several brown bears fishing in streams visible from the air, providing their first glimpse of the massive animals they hoped to photograph during their expedition. Morrison's commentary included detailed information about bear behavior patterns, seasonal movements, and preferred fishing locations that would prove valuable for their wildlife observation plans. Their landing site consisted of a protected bay approximately 2 miles southeast of Larsen Creek's mouth, where Morrison expertly maneuvered the Beaver between submerged rocks and tidal flats to reach a suitable beaching location. The transition from flight to wilderness was immediate and dramatic, as the engine noise gave way to the sounds of wind, waves, and seabirds that would provide their acoustic backdrop for the next 2 weeks. Morrison assisted with unloading their equipment, reviewing pickup procedures and emergency protocols one final time before departing. The sound of the Beaver's engine faded gradually as Morrison disappeared into the distance, leaving the group alone in one of North America's most remote wilderness areas. Their first priority involved establishing a secure base camp that would serve as their headquarters for the duration of their expedition. Marcus led a systematic evaluation of potential camping sites, applying principles he had learned through years of wilderness guiding to identify locations that balance safety, comfort, and environmental impact considerations. The area near their landing site offered several suitable options, with elevated ground providing drainage and wind protection while remaining accessible to their planned exploration routes. The group selected a site approximately 300 yards from the beach on a slight rise that offered views of both the bay and the inland mountains they planned to explore. Setting up their camp required several hours of careful work, as the complex shelter system and food storage arrangements demanded precision to ensure effectiveness in the challenging environment. Jennifer and Sarah worked together to establish the cooking area and bear-proof food storage system, while Marcus and David focused on tent placement and guy line configuration to withstand potential high winds. Amanda assumed responsibility for organizing their shared equipment and establishing protocols for maintaining gear in the damp coastal environment. The process revealed the fruits of their extensive planning, as each person understood their role and the equipment performed as expected in field conditions. Their first evening in camp provided an introduction to the sensory experience of Kodiak wilderness that no amount of preparation could fully convey. The constant sound of waves against the rocky shoreline mixed with bird calls and the occasional splash of jumping salmon in Larsen Creek. The air carried scents of salt water, decomposing kelp, and the rich organic smell of bare, disturbed earth that would become increasingly familiar over the following days. Temperatures dropped to the low 40s after sunset, requiring warm clothing and careful attention to staying dry in the humid coastal environment. Dinner preparation became a carefully choreographed process designed to minimize food odors and bear attractants while providing adequate nutrition for their planned activities. Sarah had developed a comprehensive meal plan that emphasized dehydrated foods requiring minimal cooking time and producing limited aromatic waste. Their cooking area, located 100 yards downwind from their sleeping area, included a portable windscreen and careful procedures for cleaning dishes and disposing of wastewater in accordance with Leave No Trace principles. The group maintained constant awareness of their surroundings during food preparation, understanding that cooking odors could attract bears from considerable distances. The first night passed without incident, though several group members reported hearing unidentified sounds that could have been wildlife moving through the area. Marcus maintained a watch schedule that ensured someone remained alert throughout the night, a precaution he considered essential given their location in prime bear habitat. The experience of sleeping in such a remote location initially proved challenging for some group members, as the complete absence of human-generated sounds created an acoustic environment unlike anything they had experienced. Sarah documented their first day's experiences in detailed journal entries, establishing a record-keeping practice that would continue throughout their expedition. Monday, August 25th, began with a spectacular sunrise over the mountains east of their camp, as golden light gradually illuminated the landscape and revealed the full scope of their wilderness setting. The morning routine they established would be repeated with minor variations throughout their expedition, beginning with a careful inspection of their camp perimeter for signs of nocturnal wildlife activity. Marcus conducted systematic checks of their food storage containers and guy lines, while other group members prepared breakfast and organized gear for the day's activities. Their morning meal consisted of oatmeal with dried fruit and coffee prepared on a compact stove system designed for efficiency and minimal environmental impact. Their first full day's activities focused on establishing familiarity with the immediate area around their camp while beginning their wildlife observation and photography objectives. Jennifer had identified several promising locations based on aerial photography and Morrison's recommendations, including a series of tidal pools near the mouth of Larson Creek that attracted both marine life and terrestrial wildlife. The group's movement through the terrain required careful attention to bear safety protocols, including making noise to avoid surprising any animals and constantly scanning for signs of recent bear activity. The landscape around Larson Bay presented a complex mosaic of ecosystems that reflected the intersection of marine and terrestrial environments characteristic of Kodiak Island. Dense stands of Sitka spruce and cottonwood trees lined the creek valleys, while open meadows dominated by grasses and wildflowers covered the slopes above treeline. Berry patches containing salmon berries, blueberries, and cloudberries provided important food sources for bears and smaller wildlife, with many showing evidence of recent feeding activity. The group's scientific training allowed them to interpret these ecological signs and understand the habitat preferences that made the area so attractive to Kodiak brown bears. Their first bear sighting occurred around 10:30 a.m. as they approached a bend in Larson Creek, approximately 1 mile upstream from their camp. Jennifer, who was leading the group's movement and scanning ahead with binoculars, spotted a large brown bear feeding on salmon in a deep pool beside several partially submerged logs. The bear appeared unaware of their presence at a distance of approximately 200 yards, allowing the group to observe and photograph natural feeding behavior without creating a disturbance. Through her binoculars, Jennifer could see that the bear was an adult male of exceptional size, with a massive head and distinctive light-colored tips on its dark brown fur that would help identify it in future observations. Marcus estimated the bear's weight at approximately 800 to 900 pounds, based on its body proportions and comparison to the surrounding environment, though he acknowledged the difficulty of accurate weight estimation from a distance. The bear's fishing technique involved waiting motionless beside the pool until salmon approached, then striking with lightning speed to capture fish that appeared tiny in its massive jaws. Over the course of 30 minutes, they observed the bear catch and consume 7 salmon, demonstrating the feeding efficiency that allowed Kodiak bears to achieve their enormous size during peak salmon runs. Sarah documented the sighting with detailed notes about the bear's behavior, physical characteristics, and environmental conditions, establishing a data collection protocol that would continue throughout their expedition. Her background in research methodology proved valuable for creating systematic observations that could contribute to scientific understanding of bear behavior in the region. Amanda captured extensive photographs using a telephoto lens, obtaining images that clearly showed the bear's feeding techniques and massive physical presence in its natural habitat. The encounter provided their first direct experience with the size and power of Kodiak brown bears, as even at a considerable distance, the animal's presence dominated the landscape and influenced their movements. David, whose hunting background had exposed him to large game animals throughout the western United States, expressed amazement at the bear's size and the casual efficiency with which it harvested salmon. The group maintained their observation position for nearly an hour before the bear finished feeding and moved upstream, disappearing into dense vegetation that lined the creek. Their return to camp for lunch provided an opportunity to process their first bear encounter and discuss safety protocols based on actual field conditions. Marcus emphasized the importance of maintaining situational awareness and avoiding predictable movement patterns that could inadvertently lead to close encounters with feeding bears. The group reviewed their emergency procedures and confirmed that everyone understood the proper response to different types of bear encounters, from distant sightings to close confrontations that might require defensive actions. The afternoon's activities included exploring the coastline near their camp and investigating tidal pools that served as feeding areas for both marine life and terrestrial wildlife during low tide periods. The complex intertidal ecosystem provided subjects for Jennifer's marine biology interests, while offering opportunities for wildlife photography in a different habitat type. They discovered numerous tracks in the soft sand and mud near the high tide line, including several bear tracks that appeared fresh enough to have been made within the past 24 hours. One set of tracks particularly captured their attention due to its exceptional size, with paw prints measuring over 12 inches in length and showing clear claw marks that extended several inches beyond the toe pads. Marcus compared the tracks to reference materials in their field guides, confirming that they indicated a bear of extraordinary size, potentially exceeding 1,000 pounds based on the print dimensions. The tracks followed the shoreline for several hundred yards before turning inland toward the creek drainage, suggesting regular travel patterns between marine foraging areas and salmon fishing locations. Sarah used a ruler and camera to document the track measurements, creating a photographic record that could be compared to scientific literature on bear track analysis. Her documentation revealed that the largest tracks exceeded the maximum sizes reported in most field guides, supporting Marcus's assessment that they were observing signs of an exceptionally large individual. The tracks appeared to have been made during the previous night's low tide, indicating that large bears were actively using the area around their camp during hours when the group would be sleeping. Evening camp routines became increasingly important as the group developed familiarity with their environment and refined procedures based on field experience. Dinner preparation occurred earlier than their normal schedule to ensure completion before bear activity typically increased during twilight hours. Their meal selection emphasized foods with minimal cooking requirements and limited aromatic waste, following recommendations from bear safety experts who emphasized scent management as crucial for avoiding dangerous encounters. As darkness approached, the group gathered around their camp stove for conversations about the day's observations and plans for the following day's activities. The clear weather provided spectacular views of stars and aurora activity that would have been impossible to observe in urban settings, though the constant awareness of their vulnerability in bear country added an element of tension to their wilderness experience. Marcus maintained the watch schedule established on their first night, understanding that vigilance represented their primary defense against potential problems with nocturnal wildlife activity. Tuesday, August 26th, brought partly cloudy skies and light winds that created ideal conditions for exploring areas farther from their base camp. Their planned route would take them up the main drainage of Larsen Creek toward alpine meadows that offered both spectacular scenery and prime bear habitat during the late summer berry season. Marcus estimated the round-trip distance at approximately 8 miles, with significant elevation gain, requiring careful pacing and attention to weather conditions that could change rapidly in the mountainous terrain. Their departure from camp occurred earlier than previous days, as the longer hiking distance required additional time for both travel and wildlife observation opportunities. Jennifer carried specialized equipment for collecting water samples and documenting aquatic ecosystems, while Amanda focused on photographing the diverse plant communities they encountered at different elevations. David assumed responsibility for route finding and navigation, using GPS devices and topographic maps to ensure they could return to camp even if weather conditions reduced visibility. The trail they followed consisted primarily of game paths created by generations of bears traveling between feeding areas, providing efficient routes through dense vegetation while offering insights into animal behavior patterns. The paths showed evidence of recent use, including fresh scat deposits, hair samples caught on branches, and claw marks on trees that marked territorial boundaries or feeding locations. Marcus documented these signs as they traveled, creating a comprehensive record of bear activity that revealed the intensity of use in different habitat types. Their ascent took them through several distinct ecological zones, from coastal forest dominated by Sitka spruce near their starting point to alpine tundra characterized by low-growing shrubs and wildflowers at higher elevations. Each zone supported different wildlife species and offered unique opportunities for scientific observation and photography. Jennifer's expertise in ecosystem analysis proved valuable for interpreting the relationships between habitat types and wildlife utilization patterns they observed throughout their route. The first significant bear encounter of the day occurred around 11:15 a.m. as they crested a ridge approximately 4 miles from camp. David, who was leading the group's movement, spotted 2 bears feeding in a berry patch on the opposite slope at a distance of roughly 150 yards. The bears appeared to be a female with a large yearling cub based on their size differential and behavioral interactions. Through binoculars, the group could observe detailed feeding behavior as the bears systematically harvested ripe berries while maintaining constant awareness of their surroundings. The female bear showed characteristics that suggested she was an experienced individual familiar with the area, as her feeding technique demonstrated knowledge of the most productive berry patches and efficient movement patterns between them. Her yearling cub followed closely, learning feeding techniques and safety behaviors that would prove essential for independent survival. The educational value of the observation impressed Sarah, whose research background helped her appreciate the complexity of learned behaviors being transmitted between generations of bears. Amanda documented the encounter with extensive photography, obtaining images that clearly showed the size difference between adult and yearling bears while capturing natural feeding behaviors uninfluenced by human presence. Her telephoto lens allowed detailed documentation without disturbing the animals, maintaining the ethical standards for wildlife photography that the group had established before their expedition. The images revealed the remarkable dexterity with which even large bears could manipulate small berries, using their lips and tongues with surprising delicacy despite their massive paws and claws. The observation continued for nearly 45 minutes as the bears gradually moved through the berry patch, allowing the group to document feeding rates, movement patterns, and social interactions between mother and cub. Jennifer timed the feeding behaviors and estimated consumption rates, calculating that the adult female consumed several hundred berries during their observation period. The caloric value of this feeding represented a significant contribution to the fat reserves necessary for surviving the approaching winter denning period. Their presence eventually attracted the attention of the adult female, who stood on her hind legs to investigate their scent and visual presence across the valley. The bear's alert posture and focused attention toward their location indicated that she was evaluating the potential threat they represented to her cub's safety. After several minutes of observation, the female determined that they posed no immediate danger and resumed feeding, though she maintained increased vigilance throughout the remainder of their observation period. The group's response to being detected demonstrated proper bear safety protocols as they remained motionless and avoided sudden movements that could be interpreted as threatening behavior. Marcus quietly reviewed emergency procedures with other group members, ensuring that everyone understood appropriate responses if the bear's behavior indicated increased stress or territorial aggression. Their preparation and knowledge of bear behavior allowed them to continue observing while maintaining safety for both humans and wildlife. Lunch occurred at a scenic overlook that provided panoramic views of the Larsen Bay watershed, while offering protection from increasing winds that accompanied afternoon weather changes. The location allowed them to monitor weather conditions and observe wildlife activity across a broad area of habitat, contributing to their understanding of animal movement patterns and preferred feeding locations. Sarah used the opportunity to update her research notes with detailed observations from the morning's bear encounters. The afternoon's exploration took them into alpine terrain above treeline, where different plant communities supported unique wildlife species adapted to harsh environmental conditions. The open terrain offered excellent visibility for detecting wildlife while requiring careful attention to sudden weather changes that could create dangerous conditions for unprepared travelers. Wind speeds increased significantly at higher elevations, requiring additional clothing layers and protection for sensitive equipment, including cameras and electronic devices. Their highest point for the day provided spectacular views of the surrounding mountains and coastline, revealing the scale and remoteness of the landscape they were exploring. From this vantage point, they could observe multiple drainage systems and identify potential exploration routes for future days of their expedition. The perspective also emphasized their isolation from any form of human assistance, reinforcing the importance of self-reliance and careful decision-making throughout their wilderness experience. The descent toward camp took them through different terrain that revealed additional evidence of bear activity, including several daybeds where large animals had rested during warm weather periods. The beds showed impressions that suggested bears of exceptional size, with compressed vegetation areas measuring over 6 feet in length and 4 feet in width. Marcus photographed the beds for size comparison and documentation purposes, noting their locations on topographic maps for future reference. Their return to camp occurred during late afternoon hours when bear activity typically increased, requiring heightened awareness and careful movement through areas of limited visibility. The group maintained proper spacing and communication protocols while traveling through dense vegetation near Larson Creek, understanding that salmon-focused bears could be encountered unexpectedly in these prime fishing locations. Their approach to camp included systematic inspection of the area for any signs of wildlife intrusion during their absence. The camp inspection revealed no evidence of bear activity, though several ground squirrel burrows near their food storage area showed signs of recent excavation that could indicate wildlife interest in their supplies. Marcus reinforced their bear-proof container systems and reviewed proper food handling procedures with all group members, emphasizing the critical importance of eliminating attractants that could draw dangerous wildlife to their camp area. The group's disciplined approach to scent management had proven effective during their first 3 days in bear country. Evening activities included processing the day's photographs and research data while preparing for another night in the wilderness. Jennifer compiled water sample data and wildlife observations into comprehensive field notes that documented ecosystem relationships and animal behavior patterns they had observed. Amanda reviewed her photography, identifying the most successful images and planning equipment adjustments for future wildlife encounters. Sarah updated her detailed expedition journal with narrative descriptions of their experiences and scientific observations. Weather conditions remained stable overnight, though increased cloud cover suggested potential changes in the following day's conditions. The group's sleep quality improved as they became accustomed to wilderness sounds and developed confidence in their safety preparations. Marcus continued maintaining watch schedules, though the routine had become more comfortable as group members gained familiarity with their environment and potential wildlife activity patterns. Wednesday, August 27th, began with overcast skies and light rain that would influence their activity plans and equipment requirements throughout the day. The weather change provided opportunities to experience different environmental conditions while testing their gear systems under challenging circumstances. Marcus assessed the conditions and determined that their planned exploration could continue safely with appropriate clothing and equipment adjustments to maintain comfort and safety in wet conditions. Their morning routine adapted to the rain with modified procedures for food preparation and equipment management designed to minimize moisture exposure for critical items including electronics and sleeping systems. The group's high-quality rain gear proved effective for maintaining comfort during meal preparation and camp maintenance activities. Jennifer used the weather change as an opportunity to discuss how precipitation affected wildlife behavior and habitat utilization patterns in the coastal environment. The day's planned route followed Larson Creek downstream from their camp toward its mouth, exploring different habitat types and wildlife utilization areas in tidal influence zones. This area represented unique ecosystem conditions where freshwater and saltwater environments intersected, creating distinctive plant and animal communities adapted to variable salinity and water level conditions. The route offered excellent wildlife observation opportunities while requiring careful attention to tide schedules that could affect their travel options. Their departure from camp occurred later than usual due to equipment preparation requirements for wet weather conditions, though the modified schedule aligned well with tidal timing that would provide optimal access to intertidal observation areas. The rain created atmospheric conditions that enhanced the wilderness experience while limiting visibility ranges that required adjustments to their wildlife detection and safety protocols. Group members maintained closer spacing and increased vocal communication to ensure coordination in reduced visibility conditions. The first mile of their route followed established game trails through dense forest, where rain created a cathedral-like atmosphere with muted lighting and enhanced sound acoustics. Water droplets falling from branches created constant background sounds that masked their movement, while potentially making it more difficult to detect wildlife activity ahead of their travel route. Marcus emphasized the importance of frequent stops to listen for wildlife sounds and scan areas ahead for movement or other signs of animal activity. Their first significant wildlife sighting occurred approximately 1.5 miles from camp, where they encountered a black bear feeding on salmon carcasses in a shallow side channel of the main creek. The bear appeared smaller than the brown bears they had observed previously, though still impressive in size at an estimated 300 to 400 pounds, based on visual comparison to surrounding environmental features. The animal's black coat color and more compact build distinguished it clearly from the brown bear subspecies that dominated the area, though both species utilized similar feeding areas during salmon runs. Jennifer explained that black bears occasionally occurred on Kodiak Island, though they remained much less common than the endemic brown bear population that dominated most ecological niches. The presence of both species in the same area created interesting competitive dynamics, as brown bears typically dominated feeding sites through size advantage and more aggressive territorial behavior. Their observation of successful black bear fishing demonstrated the species' ability to utilize marginal habitats and timing strategies that avoided direct competition with larger brown bears. The black bear's awareness of their presence became apparent when it briefly looked in their direction before returning to feeding activities, suggesting a higher tolerance for human presence than might be typical for brown bears in the same situation. The bear's relaxed body language and continued feeding behavior indicated that it did not perceive them as an immediate threat, allowing extended observation opportunities without causing stress to the animal. Amanda documented the encounter with photography that captured the bear's fishing techniques and successful salmon captures. Their observation period extended for approximately 30 minutes as they watched the black bear demonstrate efficient fishing strategies adapted to the smaller side channel environment. The bear's technique involved patient waiting beside deeper pools where salmon rested during their upstream migration, followed by quick strikes that rarely missed their targets. The success rate impressed David, whose fishing experience provided perspective on the difficulty of catching salmon under natural conditions without specialized equipment. Continuing downstream, the group encountered increasingly diverse habitat types as they approached areas influenced by tidal fluctuations. The vegetation communities changed from interior forest species to salt-tolerant plants adapted to periodic saltwater exposure during high tide periods. These transitional zones supported different wildlife species and provided important feeding areas for both terrestrial and marine animals during specific tide cycles. Around 11:30 a.m., as they approached a large meadow area approximately half a mile from the creek mouth, Marcus suddenly raised his hand in the established signal for immediate halt, indicating that he had detected something significant ahead of their position. Through hand signals, he communicated that he could see a very large bear feeding in the meadow, at a distance he estimated at approximately 75 yards. The group immediately implemented their protocols for close bear encounters, moving slowly into positions that provided visibility while maintaining escape route options if the situation deteriorated. Through careful observation with binoculars, they could see that this bear exceeded the size of any they had previously encountered during their expedition. Marcus estimated its weight at over 1,000 pounds, based on its massive body proportions and the way it dominated the landscape around it. The bear's coat showed the distinctive light-tipped guard hairs, characteristic of mature male Kodiak brown bears, and its enormous head and shoulder hump indicated a fully mature individual in prime physical condition. The bear appeared to be feeding on grass and sedges in the meadow, supplementing its salmon-focused diet with plant materials that provided different nutrients essential for maintaining its massive body size. Its feeding technique involved using its enormous paws to strip large quantities of vegetation, which it processed with remarkable efficiency using its powerful jaws and specialized teeth. The casual manner in which it moved through the environment demonstrated the confidence of an apex predator completely comfortable in its territory. Jennifer recognized this individual as potentially the same bear that Dr. Holbrook had designated as Bear 482 during his research presentations, based on distinctive markings and exceptional size characteristics that matched his documentation. If this identification proved correct, they were observing one of the largest known Kodiak brown bears, an individual that represented the pinnacle of the subspecies' physical development under optimal environmental conditions. The significance of the encounter impressed all group members, who understood that they were witnessing something truly exceptional in North American wildlife. Sarah documented the sighting with detailed notes about the bear's physical characteristics, behavior patterns, and environmental conditions, creating a record that could contribute to ongoing scientific research on bear ecology in the region. Her systematic approach to data collection ensured that their observation would have value beyond personal experience, potentially contributing to understanding of how individual bears utilize different habitat types during specific seasons. The enormous bear's presence dominated the meadow environment in a way that seemed to influence other wildlife activity in the area. Birds that had been active in surrounding vegetation became quiet, and ground squirrels that had been visible during their approach disappeared entirely. The bear's status as an apex predator was evident in how other species responded to its presence, creating a zone of influence that extended well beyond its immediate physical location. Amanda attempted photography of the giant bear, though the distance and lighting conditions challenged her ability to capture images that fully conveyed the animal's impressive size and presence. Her telephoto lens allowed documentation of the bear's general appearance and behavior, though the true scale of the animal remained difficult to convey without reference objects that could provide size comparison. The images would serve as valuable documentation of their encounter, even if they could not fully capture the awe-inspiring nature of observing such a massive predator in its natural habitat. Their observation position required careful management to avoid detection by the bear while maintaining visibility for continued documentation. The wind direction favored their concealment, carrying their scent away from the bear's location. But they understood that any change in wind patterns could immediately alert the animal to their presence. Marcus monitored weather conditions constantly, prepared to implement withdrawal procedures if environmental factors shifted in ways that could compromise their safety. The bear's feeding behavior continued for over an hour, during which time it consumed enormous quantities of vegetation while periodically raising its massive head to scan the surrounding area for potential threats or opportunities. Its alertness demonstrated the constant vigilance necessary for survival in a competitive environment where territorial disputes and resource competition occurred regularly among large bears. Even as an apex predator, the bear maintained awareness that reflected the caution necessary for avoiding conflicts that could result in injuries. Around 12:45 p.m., the bear's behavior changed abruptly as it lifted its head and focused attention in their direction, suggesting that it had become aware of their presence through scent, sound, or visual detection. The bear's alert posture and focused attention created immediate tension within the group, as they understood that their concealment had been compromised, and the bear was evaluating their potential threat level. Marcus quietly reviewed emergency procedures with other group members while preparing for possible defensive actions if the bear's behavior escalated. For several minutes, the massive bear remained motionless in an alert posture, apparently attempting to identify the nature and intent of the human presence it had detected. Its enormous size became even more apparent when it stood on its hind legs to gain better visibility, revealing a standing height that Marcus estimated at over 9 feet. The bear's impressive physical presence and obvious intelligence created a profound impact on all group members, who realized they were experiencing one of North America's most magnificent predators, displaying natural behaviors in pristine wilderness conditions. The standoff continued for approximately 10 minutes, during which the bear gradually determined that the human presence did not represent an immediate threat to its feeding activities or territorial security. The animal's decision-making process was evident in its body language, as tension gradually decreased and it resumed feeding behavior while maintaining increased alertness levels. The group's proper response to detection had avoided escalation of the encounter, demonstrating the effectiveness of their preparation and knowledge of appropriate bear safety protocols. Their withdrawal from the observation area occurred gradually and carefully, using terrain features to maintain concealment while increasing distance from the massive bear. Marcus led the movement with careful attention to wind direction and noise minimization, understanding that sudden sounds or movements could still trigger a defensive response from an animal of this size and power. The group's coordinated movement demonstrated their teamwork and shared commitment to wildlife safety principles. The encounter with the enormous bear provided a dramatic highlight for their expedition, representing the type of wildlife experience that justified the extensive planning and expense required to reach such remote locations. Jennifer's scientific excitement was evident as she discussed the significance of observing such a large individual displaying natural behaviors without human interference. The experience reinforced their appreciation for wilderness conservation efforts that maintained habitat conditions necessary to support such magnificent predators. Their return route to camp followed a different path that avoided the giant bear's feeding area while providing opportunities to explore additional habitat types along Larson Creek. The alternate route took them through areas showing extensive bear sign, including numerous tracks, scat deposits, and vegetation disturbance that indicated heavy utilization by multiple individuals. The abundance of bear sign emphasized the richness of the ecosystem and the high population density that supported multiple large predators within relatively small geographical areas. Lunch occurred at a protected location that offered views of both the creek and surrounding meadows, while providing security from surprise wildlife encounters. The meal provided opportunities to process their morning's experiences and discuss the implications of encountering such an exceptionally large bear. David expressed amazement at the animal's size and presence, noting that his hunting experiences throughout North America had never exposed him to anything approaching the magnitude of the Kodiak giant they had observed. The afternoon's activities included exploring areas closer to their camp while maintaining heightened awareness following their encounter with the massive bear. The knowledge that such a large and potentially dangerous predator was active in their immediate area influenced their movement patterns and safety protocols, requiring increased vigilance during all outdoor activities. Marcus emphasized that their encounter demonstrated both the incredible wildlife viewing opportunities and inherent risks associated with camping in prime bear habitat. Their exploration revealed additional evidence of the giant bear's activities, including a daybed in dense vegetation approximately 200 yards from their morning observation site. The bed showed impressions that confirmed the animal's enormous size, with compressed vegetation areas that exceeded any they had previously documented. The bed's location suggested that the bear regularly utilized the meadow area for feeding and resting, indicating established behavior patterns that could influence their future movement plans. As they approached camp, the group maintained careful attention to their surroundings, understanding that the afternoon and evening hours represented peak activity periods for bear foraging and movement. Their systematic approach to camp entry included thorough inspection of the area for any signs of wildlife intrusion during their absence, though their disciplined food storage and scent management practices had continued to prove effective in avoiding unwanted animal attention. Evening camp routines occurred with heightened awareness following their encounter with the enormous bear, as group members understood that such a large and confident predator could potentially approach their camp area during nocturnal activity periods. Marcus reinforced all safety protocols and reviewed emergency procedures with particular attention to defensive strategies that might be necessary if confronted by an animal of extraordinary size and power. The group's preparation and equipment included bear spray devices, though everyone understood that effectiveness against a bear of this magnitude remained uncertain. Dinner preparation and consumption occurred with enhanced attention to scent management and rapid cleanup procedures designed to minimize the duration of food odors that could attract wildlife attention. Their systematic approach to camp hygiene and waste management had become routine practices that reflected their commitment to minimizing human-bear conflicts while maintaining safety for both humans and wildlife. Sarah documented their bear safety protocols in her expedition journal, creating a record of effective practices for future wilderness travelers. The clear evening weather provided spectacular viewing conditions for aurora activity and stars that would have been impossible to observe in urban environments, though the group's appreciation for natural beauty remained tempered by awareness of their vulnerability in an environment dominated by large predators. The contrast between scenic beauty and potential danger created a unique psychological experience that emphasized humanity's relationship with wild nature in its most pristine form. Night watch schedules assumed increased importance following their encounter with the giant bear, as Marcus understood that an animal of such size and confidence might investigate human activity during hours when most wildlife movement occurred. The watch protocols ensured that someone remained alert throughout the night, prepared to detect and respond to any wildlife activity that approached their camp area. Group members accepted the responsibility with understanding that their safety depended on maintaining constant vigilance in such a challenging environment. Thursday, August 28th, began with clear skies and calm conditions that created ideal weather for their planned exploration of Upper Larson Creek drainage areas. The morning routine proceeded efficiently as group members had developed familiarity with their equipment and procedures over the previous days of wilderness camping. Marcus reviewed weather forecasts and determined that conditions would remain favorable throughout the day, allowing them to venture farther from camp than previous excursions while maintaining safety margins for return travel. Their intended route would take them upstream along Larson Creek to alpine meadows and lake areas that offered prime bear habitat during late summer berry feeding periods. The round-trip distance of approximately 10 miles with significant elevation gain required early departure and careful pacing to ensure completion during daylight hours. Markers calculated their travel time based on terrain conditions and planned photography stops, establishing a schedule that provided adequate time for wildlife observation while maintaining safety buffers for unexpected delays. Equipment preparation emphasized photographic and research gear that would allow comprehensive documentation of wildlife and ecosystem conditions they encountered during their most ambitious day hike of the expedition. Jennifer carried water sampling equipment and field research materials, while Amanda focused on camera systems optimized for wildlife photography under varying lighting conditions. David assumed responsibility for navigation and emergency equipment, ensuring that group safety remained the priority despite their scientific and recreational objectives. Their departure from camp occurred at 6:30 a.m., taking advantage of early morning lighting conditions and reduced wildlife activity that typically occurred during dawn hours. The clear weather provided excellent visibility for route finding and wildlife detection, allowing efficient travel through terrain that had proven challenging under overcast conditions during previous days. Group spacing and communication protocols remained essential for coordination and safety as they traveled through dense vegetation areas with limited visibility. The first 2 miles of their route followed established game trails along Larson Creek through habitat, showing extensive evidence of bear activity, including fresh tracks, scat deposits, and salmon remains from recent fishing activities. The abundance of bear sign indicated heavy utilization of the corridor by multiple individuals, requiring constant vigilance and proper noise-making procedures to avoid surprising animals that might be feeding or resting in concealed locations. Marcus documented track sizes and estimated that at least 4 different bears had used the trail within the previous 24-hour period. Around 8:15 a.m., as they approached a series of beaver ponds approximately 3 miles from camp, Jennifer spotted movement in dense willows on the opposite side of the creek at a distance of roughly 100 yards. Through binoculars, she identified 2 brown bears that appeared to be fishing in a beaver pond, while remaining partially concealed by surrounding vegetation. The bears showed characteristics suggesting they were adult individuals, though dense vegetation made detailed size assessment difficult from their observation position. Marcus led the group to an elevated observation point that provided better visibility while maintaining safe distance from the feeding bears. From this vantage point, they could observe that one bear significantly exceeded the size of its companion, with massive body proportions that suggested an extremely large individual. The smaller bear appeared to defer to the larger animal's feeding activities, indicating dominance relationships that were common among bears, utilizing concentrated food resources like productive fishing locations. The larger bear's behavior demonstrated fishing techniques adapted to beaver pond conditions, where salmon concentrated in deeper areas while attempting to navigate upstream towards spawning areas. The bear's patient approach involved waiting beside narrow channels where salmon movement was constrained, allowing highly efficient capture rates with minimal energy expenditure. Over 30 minutes of observation, they documented successful fishing attempts that confirmed the bear's expertise in utilizing this specific habitat type. Jennifer timed the feeding behaviors and estimated that the large bear consumed approximately 12 salmon during their observation period, representing substantial caloric intake that contributed to the fat reserves necessary for winter survival. The feeding efficiency impressed all group members, as the bear rarely missed attempts and processed each fish with remarkable speed, using its powerful jaws and specialized teeth. The smaller bear's less successful fishing attempts suggested either inexperience or subordinate status that limited access to the most productive fishing locations. Amanda's photography captured detailed images of the bear's fishing techniques and social interactions, providing documentation of natural behaviors that occurred without human influence or disturbance. Her telephoto lens allowed close examination of the bear's physical characteristics and behavior patterns while maintaining appropriate distance for both human safety and wildlife protection. The images revealed the remarkable adaptability that allowed Kodiak brown bears to exploit diverse food sources throughout their island ecosystem. Around 9:30 a.m., both bears became alert to something upstream from their location, simultaneously lifting their heads and focusing attention in the same direction with obvious concern. Their body language indicated detection of something significant, possibly another bear or other perceived threat that warranted immediate attention. The bears' synchronized response suggested communication between them, either through vocalizations below human hearing range or subtle body language signals that coordinated their behavior. Within moments of the bears' alert behavior, the source of their concern became apparent as an enormous brown bear emerged from dense vegetation approximately 200 yards upstream from the fishing bears. This new arrival exceeded even the large fishing bear in apparent size, moving with the confident gait characteristic of dominant individuals accustomed to priority access to preferred resources. Marcus immediately recognized this as potentially the same giant bear they had encountered during the previous day, based on distinctive physical characteristics and extraordinary size. The appearance of the massive bear immediately changed the behavioral dynamics at the beaver pond, as both fishing bears showed submissive postures and began moving away from the productive fishing location. The smaller bear departed immediately, disappearing into dense vegetation without attempting to defend its fishing position. The larger fishing bear showed reluctance to abandon the site, but ultimately demonstrated submission to the approaching giant by slowly backing away while maintaining visual contact with the dominant animal. The giant bear's approach to the beaver pond demonstrated the casual confidence of an apex predator accustomed to priority access to any resource within its territory. Its enormous size became increasingly apparent as it moved through the landscape, dwarfing environmental features that had provided scale references for other bears. Marcus estimated the animal's weight at potentially exceeding 1,200 pounds, based on its massive body proportions and the way it dominated its surroundings through sheer physical presence. Sarah documented the dominance interactions with detailed behavioral notes that captured the complex social dynamics occurring among bears, competing for limited high-quality resources. Her observations revealed the subtle communication methods and threat displays that allowed resolution of competitive conflicts without physical violence that could injure valuable individuals within the population. The encounter provided valuable insights into bear social behavior that extended beyond simple feeding activities. The giant bear's fishing technique proved even more efficient than the previous occupants, as its enormous size and strength allowed it to access deeper areas of the beaver pond that had been unavailable to smaller individuals. Its patient approach and lightning-fast strikes demonstrated the hunting skills that had enabled it to achieve such extraordinary physical development under competitive conditions. The bear's success rate approached 100%, with each fishing attempt resulting in a captured salmon. Amanda continued photographing throughout the dominance encounter and subsequent fishing activities, obtaining images that documented the size relationships between different individual bears and their fishing strategies. The photographs provided clear evidence of the competitive hierarchy that existed among bears utilizing concentrated food sources, with the largest individuals claiming priority access through intimidation rather than physical aggression. Her documentation captured the peaceful resolution of resource conflicts through established social protocols. The giant bear's feeding session continued for over an hour, during which it consumed an estimated 20 salmon while maintaining constant awareness of its surroundings for potential competitors or threats. Its feeding efficiency allowed rapid accumulation of the calories necessary for maintaining its massive body weight, while building fat reserves for the approaching denning period. The bear's obvious success as a predator emphasized the remarkable productivity of Kodiak Island ecosystems that could support such enormous individuals. Around 11:15 a.m., their observation was interrupted by increasing wind that created challenging conditions for wildlife viewing and photography. The weather change also influenced bear behavior, as the giant bear showed increased alertness to scent detection that could reveal the presence of other animals, including the human observers. Marcus recognized that changing wind patterns could potentially carry their scent to the bear, creating a situation that required careful management to avoid dangerous confrontations. The group's withdrawal from the observation area occurred gradually and systematically, using terrain features and vegetation cover to maintain concealment while increasing distance from the giant bear. Their movement required careful coordination to avoid noise generation that could attract unwanted attention from an animal of such size and unpredictable temperament. Marcus led the withdrawal with constant attention to wind direction and escape route options. If the situation deteriorated rapidly, their continued travel upstream took them through increasingly alpine terrain where different plant communities supported unique wildlife species adapted to harsh environmental conditions. The elevation gain provided spectacular views of the surrounding mountains and coastline, while offering excellent visibility for detecting wildlife across broad areas of habitat. The open terrain reduced concerns about surprise encounters, while requiring attention to weather conditions that could change rapidly at higher elevations. Lunch occurred at a scenic overlook beside a mountain lake approximately 5 miles from their base camp, providing opportunities to rest and process their morning's wildlife observations while enjoying spectacular wilderness scenery. The location offered 360-degree views of the Larsen Bay watershed, revealing the scale and pristine condition of the ecosystem they were exploring. Jennifer used the meal break to update her research notes with detailed observations from their bear encounters and environmental conditions they had documented. The afternoon's exploration focused on alpine meadows surrounding the mountain lake, where berry patches and other food sources attracted wildlife during late summer feeding periods. The area showed extensive evidence of bear utilization, including numerous trails, daybeds, and feeding sites that indicated regular use by multiple individuals throughout the active season. David documented track measurements and estimated that at least 6 different bears had utilized the area within recent weeks. Around 2:30 p.m., while photographing alpine wildflowers in a meadow approximately 200 yards from the lake, Amanda suddenly froze and signaled for immediate group attention. Through careful observation, they could see a brown bear with 2 cubs feeding on berries in a patch approximately 150 yards across the meadow from their position. The family group appeared unaware of the human presence, allowing observation opportunities without disturbing natural behaviors or creating stress for the protective mother bear. The female bear demonstrated feeding techniques that her cubs observed and mimicked, providing educational opportunities that would prove essential for their independent survival. The cubs showed playful behavior typical of young bears, wrestling with each other and investigating various objects while remaining under their mother's protective supervision. The family group's relaxed behavior indicated that they felt secure in the remote location, far from human disturbance that might affect their natural behavior patterns. Jennifer recognized the educational value of observing bear family dynamics in pristine wilderness conditions, as such opportunities were increasingly rare due to human encroachment on critical bear habitat. The cubs' learning process involved trial and error attempts to match their mother's efficient feeding techniques, with gradual improvement in their success rates as they gained experience. The observation provided insights into knowledge transmission between generations of bears that ensured survival skills necessary for success in challenging environments. The mother bear's protective vigilance was evident in her frequent scanning of the surrounding area for potential threats to her cub's safety. Her alert behavior demonstrated the constant stress experienced by female bears, responsible for protecting vulnerable offspring in environments containing adult male bears that might pose threats to cubs. The family's feeding efficiency reflected the mother's need to maximize caloric intake while minimizing exposure time in open areas where cubs remained vulnerable to predation. Their observation continued for approximately 45 minutes as the bear family systematically worked through the berry patch, consuming enormous quantities of fruit that provided essential nutrients for both growth and fat storage. The cubs' rapid learning demonstrated the intelligence and adaptability that allowed bears to succeed in diverse environments through learned behaviors passed from experienced adults. Amanda documented the family interactions with photography that captured both feeding behaviors and social dynamics within the family group. Around 3:45 p.m., the mother bear became alert to something beyond their observation range, lifting her head and focusing attention with obvious concern that immediately influenced her cub's behavior. The family group's synchronized alert response suggested detection of potential danger, possibly another bear or threat that warranted immediate defensive preparations. The mother's body language indicated high stress levels as she positioned herself between her cubs and the perceived threat source. Within moments, the source of the mother bear's concern became apparent as the massive giant bear they had observed earlier emerged from dense vegetation at the far end of the meadow, approximately 300 yards from the family group. The enormous male's presence immediately triggered defensive behaviors from the mother bear, who vocalized warnings to her cubs while positioning herself for potential confrontation. The cubs responded to their mother's alarm by moving close to her side while showing obvious fear of the approaching giant. The size differential between the mother bear and the giant male was dramatic, with the huge male outweighing the female by potentially 600 pounds or more based on visual comparison. This size advantage meant that any physical confrontation would likely result in serious injury or death for either the mother or cubs, making avoidance the only viable strategy for the family group. The mother bear's defensive posture demonstrated her willingness to fight if necessary, while hoping to avoid conflict through intimidation displays. Marcus recognized the dangerous situation developing as the giant bear continued moving toward the berry patch occupied by the family group, creating potential for violent confrontation that could result in injuries or deaths. The group's observation position provided clear visibility of the developing situation while maintaining safe distance from potential violence between extremely powerful predators. Sarah began documenting the encounter with detailed behavioral notes that captured the complex territorial and protective behaviors being displayed. The giant bear's approach continued at a steady pace, showing no indication of avoiding the confrontation despite clear defensive signals from the mother bear. Its enormous size and confidence suggested that it was accustomed to dominating any situation through intimidation, potentially including conflicts with protective mothers. The approaching confrontation represented the type of intraspecies violence that occurred regularly in bear populations, but was rarely witnessed by humans due to the secretive nature of such encounters. Amanda positioned herself to photograph the developing confrontation while maintaining readiness to retreat if the situation escalated beyond safe observation distance. Her telephoto lens allowed documentation from appropriate range while capturing the dramatic size relationships and behavioral dynamics between the competing bears. The potential for witnessing rare wildlife behavior created excitement, tempered by concern for the safety of all animals involved. At approximately 4:15 p.m., when the giant bear had approached to within 100 yards of the family group, the mother bear made her decision to abandon the berry patch rather than risk confrontation with such a formidable opponent. Her retreat signal to her cubs was immediate and effective, as both young bears responded instantly by following their mother toward dense forest cover that would provide protection from pursuit. The family group's withdrawal demonstrated the survival priority of avoiding conflicts that could not be won. The giant bear's reaction to the family's retreat was to continue toward the berry patch without showing aggressive pursuit of the departing bears, indicating that resource acquisition rather than territorial violence motivated its behavior. The enormous animal's casual approach to the feeding area suggested that intimidation through size alone typically resolved competitive conflicts without requiring physical violence that could result in injuries even to dominant individuals. Jennifer observed that the encounter demonstrated classic bear behavior patterns where larger individuals claimed priority resource access through intimidation rather than fighting, preserving energy and avoiding injury risks for all participants. The peaceful resolution reflected evolutionary adaptations that minimized intraspecies violence while maintaining competitive hierarchies based on size and strength. The observation provided valuable insights into social dynamics that occurred regularly in bear populations but remained poorly understood due to limited human observation opportunities. The giant bears feeding in the berry patch proved even more efficient than the previous family group, as its enormous size allowed access to berry clusters beyond the reach of smaller bears. Its feeding technique involved systematic movement through the patch with remarkable thoroughness, consuming virtually all available berries within its feeding zone. The bear's success demonstrated the advantages of large size in competitive environments, where resource access determines survival and reproductive success. Their observation of the giant bear's feeding continued for approximately 30 minutes before weather conditions began deteriorating, with increasing winds and cloud formation that suggested potential storm development. Marcus recognized that their distance from camp and changing weather created risks that required immediate attention to ensure safe return before conditions became dangerous for travel. The group began systematic withdrawal from their observation position while maintaining visual contact with the feeding bear. The descent toward their base camp required careful attention to changing weather conditions and increasingly difficult terrain as visibility decreased due to cloud formation and wind-blown precipitation. Marcus led navigation through areas that had become less familiar under altered lighting conditions, using GPS devices and landmark recognition to maintain proper route finding. The weather deterioration emphasized their vulnerability in remote locations where emergency assistance remained unavailable. Around 5:30 p.m., approximately 2 miles from camp, their descent was interrupted by David's urgent signal indicating detection of a large bear directly ahead of their travel route, at a distance estimated at less than 50 yards. The bear appeared to be the giant individual they had been observing throughout the day, apparently having descended from the alpine areas ahead of their own movement. The close encounter created immediate danger that required careful management to avoid triggering defensive or aggressive responses from such a massive and potentially dangerous predator. The giant bear stood in the middle of their intended travel route, apparently unaware of their presence, but positioned in a way that prevented safe passage without very close approach or significant detour through difficult terrain. Marcus evaluated alternative routes while maintaining visual contact with the enormous animal, understanding that any movement that surprised or threatened the bear could result in a charge attack from an animal possessing overwhelming size and power advantages. The situation required immediate decision-making under potentially life-threatening circumstances. Jennifer suggested a detour route that would take them through dense alder thickets to bypass the bear's location, though this option involved difficult terrain and potential for getting lost in deteriorating weather conditions. Amanda recommended waiting for the bear to move, allowing natural behavior to resolve the situation without human intervention that could create dangerous confrontation. David advocated for noise-making to alert the bear to their presence from safe distance, allowing it to choose whether to avoid or investigate their location. Marcus decided to implement a combination approach involving careful noise generation from their current position while preparing detour options if the bear's response proved unfavorable to safe passage. His decision reflected years of wilderness guiding experience and understanding of bear behavior under various encounter circumstances. The group's coordinated response demonstrated their training and preparation for managing dangerous wildlife situations in remote locations. Their initial noise-making consisted of loud conversation and metallic sounds from camping equipment, designed to alert the bear to human presence without appearing threatening or aggressive. The sounds carried clearly through the still air, immediately attracting the giant bear's attention toward their location. The enormous animal lifted its massive head and focused directly on their position, obviously aware of their presence and evaluating their potential threat level through scent and visual assessment. For several minutes, the standoff continued as the giant bear remained motionless in an alert posture, while the group maintained their position and continued making intermittent sounds to reinforce their human identity. The bear's body language suggested evaluation rather than aggression, as it showed curiosity about their presence without displaying obvious threat behaviors such as ear flattening, jaw popping, or huffing vocalizations. The situation remained tense, but appeared manageable through proper human behavior. Around 6 p.m., the giant bear made its decision to move away from the travel corridor, slowly walking into dense vegetation approximately 50 yards from their route, without showing aggressive or defensive behaviors toward the human presence. The bear's withdrawal appeared motivated by avoidance rather than fear, as its movement remained casual and confident, despite choosing to yield the pathway to human travelers. The resolution demonstrated effective bear encounter management through appropriate human responses that avoided escalation. Marcus led the group's careful movement through the area where the bear had been positioned, maintaining alertness for any indication that the animal remained nearby or might return to investigate their passage. Their movement through the potential danger zone required coordination and quiet efficiency to minimize disturbance that could attract renewed attention from the enormous predator. The successful passage represented effective implementation of bear safety protocols under challenging field conditions. The remainder of their return journey occurred without additional wildlife encounters, though increasing weather deterioration created challenging travel conditions that tested their navigation skills and equipment performance. Wind speeds increased significantly as they descended toward their camp area, requiring additional clothing layers and protection for sensitive equipment, including cameras and electronic devices. The weather change emphasized the multiple risk factors associated with wilderness travel in challenging environments. Their arrival at camp around 7:15 p.m. occurred during deteriorating light conditions and increasing precipitation that made shelter and food preparation immediate priorities for maintaining safety and comfort. The systematic camp entry procedures included thorough inspection for any signs of wildlife intrusion during their absence, though their established food storage and scent management practices continued proving effective in avoiding unwanted animal attention. The group's disciplined approach to camp management remained essential for preventing dangerous human-bear conflicts. Evening routines occurred under challenging weather conditions that required modifications to their normal procedures for food preparation and equipment management. The increased wind and precipitation demanded careful attention to fire safety and equipment protection while maintaining the scent management protocols essential for bear country camping. Marcus reinforced the importance of maintaining safety standards despite challenging conditions that created temptation to take shortcuts in established procedures. Dinner preparation became more complex under deteriorating weather conditions, as wind and rain affected cooking efficiency and required additional time for meal completion. The group's experience with their equipment and procedures proved valuable for adapting to challenging conditions while maintaining nutrition and safety standards. Sarah documented the weather impacts and equipment performance in her expedition journal, creating records that could benefit future wilderness travelers facing similar conditions. The evening's weather continued deteriorating with increasing wind speeds and steady precipitation that created challenging conditions for any outdoor activities. The group's high-quality shelter systems proved effective for maintaining comfort and safety despite severe weather that emphasized their vulnerability in such a remote location. Their preparation and equipment quality demonstrated the importance of investing in reliable gear for expeditions in demanding environments. Night watch schedules assumed critical importance during the severe weather conditions, as reduced visibility and increased noise from wind and rain could mask wildlife activity that posed threats to camp security. Marcus emphasized the importance of maintaining alertness, despite challenging conditions that created temptation to remain inside shelters rather than conducting proper security monitoring. The group's commitment to safety protocols reflected their understanding of the multiple risk factors present in their environment. The storm conditions continued throughout the night, with wind gusts that tested their shelter systems and created constant noise that made sleep difficult for most group members. Despite the challenging conditions, their equipment performed effectively in maintaining dry and secure shelter that protected them from potentially dangerous exposure to severe weather. The experience reinforced their appreciation for quality equipment and thorough preparation when venturing into remote wilderness areas. Friday, August 29th, dawned with clearing weather conditions that revealed the storm's impact on their environment while providing relief from the challenging conditions that had tested their preparation and equipment throughout the night. The morning inspection revealed minor damage to their camp setup, including guy line adjustments and equipment repositioning required to restore full weather protection capabilities. Marcus led systematic repairs and improvements that would ensure their shelter remained effective against future weather challenges. Their morning routine proceeded efficiently despite equipment modifications required due to storm impacts, demonstrating the group's adaptation to wilderness conditions and their growing familiarity with camp management procedures. The clearing weather provided opportunities to dry equipment and reorganize supplies that had been compressed during the severe weather period. Jennifer used the improved conditions to conduct equipment inventory and assess any damage or wear that might affect their remaining expedition days. The day's planned activities required modification due to wet terrain conditions and potential for unstable weather that could create dangerous travel situations. Marcus evaluated route options and determined that exploration closer to their base camp would provide wildlife observation opportunities while maintaining safety margins for rapid return if weather conditions deteriorated again. The modified plan demonstrated adaptive management principles essential for safe wilderness travel under changing conditions. Their departure from camp occurred later than usual due to equipment maintenance requirements and careful evaluation of weather trends that could affect their safety during outdoor activities. The terrain showed obvious impacts from the previous night's storm, including standing water, muddy conditions, and vegetation damage that created new obstacles for travel. Group members adjusted their expectations and movement techniques to accommodate changed environmental conditions. The first mile of their route revealed extensive evidence of wildlife activity during the storm period, as animals had sought shelter in areas that showed concentrated tracks, bedding sites, and feeding sign. The storm appeared to have concentrated wildlife in specific locations that offered protection from severe weather, creating opportunities for observation while requiring increased caution due to potential for encountering multiple animals in confined areas. Around 9:30 a.m., while traveling through dense forest approximately 1.5 miles from camp, the group encountered fresh tracks and scat from what appeared to be the giant bear they had observed repeatedly during previous days. The sign appeared very recent, suggesting that the enormous animal had passed through the area within hours of their arrival, possibly seeking shelter from the storm in the same general vicinity as their own camp. The proximity of such a large and potentially dangerous predator created immediate security concerns that required careful evaluation. Marcus examined the tracks and estimated that they had been made within the previous 2 to 4 hours, based on their clarity and lack of weather deterioration. The track measurements confirmed exceptional size, consistent with their previous observations of the giant bear, measuring over 12 inches in length, with claw marks extending well beyond the toe pads. The tracks followed a route that would have brought the bear within approximately 200 yards of their camp during the previous night's storm. Sarah documented the fresh sign with detailed measurements and photographs that provided evidence of the giant bear's proximity to their camp area during severe weather conditions. Her documentation revealed that the bear had been moving in the direction of their camp, raising questions about whether the animal had detected their presence and investigated their location during the night. The possibility of nocturnal investigation by such a large predator created obvious safety concerns that required immediate attention. The group's discussion of the situation revealed different opinions about appropriate response to evidence of close bear activity near their camp. David advocated for relocating their camp to a different area that would provide greater separation from established bear travel routes, while Amanda suggested maintaining their current location with enhanced security protocols, including more frequent watch schedules and improved noise-making during camp activities. Jennifer recommended consulting their satellite communication device to obtain current weather forecasts and evacuation options, understanding that the combination of severe weather and close bear activity created compounding risk factors that exceeded their original expedition parameters. Her scientific background provided perspective on risk assessment and management that supported conservative decision-making when faced with multiple uncertain factors. Marcus synthesized the various opinions and determined that they would maintain their current camp while implementing enhanced safety protocols and preparing for potential early evacuation if circumstances continued deteriorating. His decision reflected careful evaluation of multiple risk factors, including weather forecasts, transportation availability, and bear activity patterns that affected their safety in the remote location. The group accepted his leadership decision while understanding that their situation required constant reassessment. Their continued exploration took them along Larson Creek toward areas they had not previously visited, providing opportunities for new wildlife observations while maintaining relatively close proximity to camp for rapid return if necessary. The route selection balanced their scientific and recreational objectives with safety requirements that had become more demanding due to evidence of large bear activity near their base camp. Around 11:15 a.m., they encountered a fishing location where several bears had obviously been active during recent days, based on abundant salmon remains, tracks, and vegetation disturbance that indicated concentrated feeding activity. The site showed evidence of use by multiple bears of varying sizes, creating a complex picture of competitive dynamics and resource utilization patterns that reflected the area's importance for bear feeding during salmon runs. Amanda documented the fishing site with extensive photography that captured both the physical evidence of bear activity and the environmental conditions that made the location attractive to multiple predators. Her images revealed the efficiency of bear fishing techniques through analysis of salmon remains that showed consistent processing patterns and high success rates. The documentation provided insights into bear ecology that extended beyond simple feeding behaviors to include resource competition and habitat utilization patterns. Jennifer collected water samples and documented aquatic conditions at the fishing site, contributing to her research on ecosystem relationships between marine and terrestrial environments. Her sampling revealed high salmon densities and optimal water conditions that explained the location's attractiveness to bear populations throughout the feeding season. The data would contribute to understanding of how environmental factors influenced wildlife distribution and behavior patterns in pristine ecosystems. Their observation of the fishing site continued for approximately 1 hour, while they documented evidence of bear activity and environmental conditions that created prime habitat for multiple species. The location's obvious importance to bear populations reinforced their understanding of resource concentration effects on wildlife behavior and competitive dynamics. Sarah recorded detailed notes about habitat characteristics and utilization patterns that reflected complex ecological relationships within the watershed. Around 12:30 p.m., their documentation activities were interrupted by the sound of splashing upstream from their location, suggesting active bear fishing in an area beyond their visual range. The sounds included vocalizations that indicated multiple bears, possibly engaged in competitive interactions over productive fishing locations. Marcus recognized that investigating the sounds would require close approach to active bears in a situation with limited visibility and escape route options. The group's discussion of whether to investigate the upstream activity revealed the tension between their wildlife observation objectives and safety considerations that had become increasingly important due to their previous encounters with extremely large bears. David expressed strong interest in documenting competitive fishing behaviors, while Amanda voiced concerns about approaching multiple bears in a confined area with limited visibility for assessing the situation before commitment to close observation. Jennifer recommended using their elevated position to gain better visibility of upstream areas before deciding whether safe observation opportunities existed. Her suggestion reflected scientific training in risk assessment and systematic evaluation of unknown situations before implementing potentially dangerous procedures. The group accepted her recommendation and began carefully moving to higher ground that would provide better visual access to upstream areas. Their elevation gain revealed a complex scene approximately 150 yards upstream, where 3 bears were fishing in a series of deep pools connected by shallow rapids that concentrated salmon movement. The bears appeared to be maintaining territorial boundaries around specific fishing locations, with occasional aggressive displays when individuals approached too closely to established positions. The competitive dynamics provided excellent observation opportunities, while raising concerns about human safety in an area where multiple large predators were actively competing for resources. Marcus evaluated the observation opportunities and determined that their elevated position provided adequate safety margins for documenting the competitive fishing behaviors without creating risks to human safety or wildlife disturbance. The distance and terrain features offered multiple escape route options if the bear's behavior indicated increased territorial aggression that might extend to human presence in the area. His assessment allowed the group to proceed with wildlife observation while maintaining conservative safety standards. Amanda positioned herself to photograph the competitive fishing activities using her telephoto lens to capture images of bear interactions and fishing techniques from appropriate distance. Her documentation revealed the subtle communication methods and threat displays that allowed multiple bears to utilize concentrated resources while minimizing violent conflicts that could injure valuable individuals within the population. The photographs provided rare documentation of natural bear social behaviors in pristine wilderness conditions. The bear's fishing techniques showed individual variations that reflected different strategies for maximizing success rates in competitive situations. The largest bear demonstrated patient waiting techniques that allowed selection of optimal fishing opportunities, while smaller individuals showed more aggressive approaches that compensated for size disadvantages through increased activity levels. The diversity of techniques revealed the behavioral flexibility that allowed bear populations to efficiently exploit concentrated food resources. Sarah documented the competitive interactions with detailed behavioral notes that captured the complex social dynamics occurring among bears, competing for limited high-quality resources. Her observations revealed subtle communication methods and territorial behaviors that maintained feeding opportunities for multiple individuals while avoiding violent confrontations that could result in serious injuries. The encounter provided valuable insights into bear social ecology that extended beyond simple feeding activities. Their observation period extended for nearly 2 hours as they documented feeding behaviors, competitive interactions, and individual bear characteristics that would contribute to scientific understanding of bear ecology in the region. The extended observation revealed patterns of resource utilization and social hierarchy that demonstrated the complex behaviors necessary for multiple large predators to coexist in areas with concentrated food sources. Jennifer's scientific excitement was evident as she recognized the research value of documenting such detailed behavioral interactions in completely natural conditions. Around 2:45 p.m., the fishing activities upstream began showing changes as one of the smaller bears abandoned its fishing location and moved downstream in the direction of the group's observation position. The bear's movement appeared motivated by territorial pressure from larger individuals rather than awareness of human presence, but its approach trajectory would potentially bring it within close proximity to their location. Marcus recognized that the changing bear distribution required immediate evaluation of their safety position and potential need for withdrawal from the area. The approaching bear appeared to be a subadult individual, estimated at approximately 400 to 500 pounds based on body proportions and comparison to environmental features. While smaller than the massive bears they had encountered previously, the animal still represented a formidable predator capable of causing serious injury or death if defensive behaviors were triggered by human presence. The bear's focus on avoiding dominant individuals upstream made it potentially less aware of other threats, creating risks for surprise encounters if the group remained in their current position. David suggested implementing noise-making procedures to alert the approaching bear to their presence from safe distance, allowing the animal to choose whether to avoid or investigate their location. His recommendation reflected established bear safety protocols designed to prevent surprise encounters that often triggered defensive attacks from startled animals. The group's previous success with noise-making techniques supported this approach as their primary strategy for managing the developing situation. Amanda recommended remaining silent and motionless to avoid attracting attention from the approaching bear, arguing that movement or noise could draw unwanted investigation from an animal that might otherwise pass by their location without incident. Her perspective reflected wildlife photography experience, where concealment often provided the safest approach to close wildlife encounters. The differing recommendations required immediate decision-making as the bear continued approaching their general area. Marcus decided to implement careful noise-making while preparing for immediate withdrawal if the bear's response indicated aggressive or investigative behaviors toward their position. His decision balanced the conflicting recommendations while maintaining multiple options for managing different potential outcomes from their bear safety intervention. The group accepted his leadership and prepared to implement coordinated responses based on the bear's reaction to their presence announcement. Their initial noise-making consisted of loud conversation and metallic sounds from equipment, designed to clearly identify human presence without appearing threatening to the approaching bear. The sounds carried effectively through the forest environment, immediately attracting the bear's attention toward their elevated position. The animal stopped its downstream movement and focused directly on their location, obviously aware of their presence and beginning evaluation of the potential threat or opportunity they represented. The bear's response to detecting human presence showed curiosity rather than immediate fear or aggression, as it approached several steps closer while maintaining alert posture and constant visual contact with their location. The animal's body language suggested evaluation and decision-making rather than defensive preparation, though its size and proximity created obvious potential for rapid escalation if the situation developed unfavorably. The group maintained their noise-making while avoiding sudden movements that could trigger defensive responses. For approximately 10 minutes, the standoff continued as the bear remained in visual contact while appearing to evaluate the human presence through scent detection and behavioral observation. The animal's position, approximately 75 yards from their location, provided adequate safety margins for most bear encounter scenarios, though its obvious interest in their presence created ongoing tension and uncertainty about its ultimate intentions. Sarah documented the encounter with detailed behavioral notes that captured the bear's decision-making process and response to human presence. Around 3:15 p.m., the bear's behavior changed abruptly as it turned away from their location and resumed downstream movement, apparently having determined that the human presence posed no immediate threat or opportunity worthy of further investigation. The bear's departure appeared motivated by natural behavior patterns rather than fear, as its movement remained casual and confident despite choosing to avoid closer approach to the human observers. The successful resolution demonstrated effective bear encounter management through appropriate noise-making and non-threatening human behavior. Jennifer expressed relief at the peaceful resolution while noting the educational value of observing bear decision-making processes when encountering human presence in wilderness conditions. The bear's evaluation and response patterns provided insights into animal cognition and threat assessment that contributed to understanding of human-wildlife interactions in pristine environments. Her scientific perspective recognized the encounter as valuable data for bear behavior research despite the stress it had created for human participants. The group's withdrawal from the area occurred systematically to avoid attracting renewed attention from bears that remained active in upstream fishing locations. Their movement required careful attention to noise minimization and route selection that would prevent surprise encounters with other wildlife while ensuring efficient progress toward their base camp. Marcus led navigation through terrain that provided multiple escape route options while maintaining progress towards safety and shelter. Their return journey revealed additional evidence of widespread bear activity throughout the watershed, including fresh tracks, scat deposits, and feeding sign that indicated heavy utilization by multiple individuals during recent days. The abundance of bear sign emphasized the area's importance as prime habitat, while reinforcing the risks associated with human presence in locations with such high predator densities. David documented track measurements and estimated that at least 8 different bears had utilized their travel corridor within the previous week. Around 4:30 p.m., approximately 1 mile from their camp, the group encountered the largest set of tracks they had observed during their entire expedition, with paw prints measuring over 13 inches in length and showing claw marks that extended nearly 4 inches beyond the toe pads. The tracks appeared extremely fresh, with sharp edges and clear detail that suggested they had been made within the previous few hours. Marcus recognized the tracks as potentially belonging to an individual even larger than the giant bear they had been observing, indicating the presence of multiple exceptionally large bears in their immediate area. Sarah photographed the enormous tracks with measurement references that documented their exceptional size relative to published scientific literature on bear track analysis. Her images revealed track characteristics that exceeded the maximum dimensions reported in most research publications, suggesting they were documenting evidence of bears at the extreme upper range of the subspecies' size potential. The discovery emphasized the remarkable quality of Kodiak Island habitat for supporting bears of extraordinary physical development. The fresh tracks followed a route that led directly toward their camp area, creating immediate concerns about the proximity of an enormous predator to their shelter and food storage systems. Marcus evaluated the track direction and estimated that the bear had passed within 100 yards of their camp within the previous 2 to 3 hours during the time period when they had been absent on their day's exploration. The timing suggested that their camp had been investigated by a bear of exceptional size during their absence. Jennifer recommended immediate inspection of their camp area to assess any evidence of bear intrusion or investigation that might have occurred during their absence. Her scientific training emphasized systematic evidence collection and analysis for understanding wildlife behavior patterns that could affect human safety in subsequent interactions. The group accepted her recommendation and accelerated their return pace to conduct thorough camp inspection before dark. David expressed concern about returning to a camp that had potentially been investigated by such an enormous bear, arguing that their food storage systems might have been compromised or that the bear's investigation could indicate ongoing interest in their location. His perspective reflected practical understanding of how bear behavior patterns could create escalating risks for human safety if animals became habituated to human presence or food sources. The group's discussion revealed different comfort levels with continuing their expedition under changed circumstances. Amanda suggested establishing watch protocols immediately upon reaching camp, with group members maintaining constant observation for any signs of bear activity while conducting camp inspection and evening routines. Her recommendation reflected wildlife photography experience where alertness and preparation often determined the difference between successful observation and dangerous encounters. The group agreed that enhanced vigilance would be essential regardless of their inspection findings. Their arrival at camp around 5:15 p.m. revealed obvious evidence of bear investigation, including disturbed vegetation around their food storage area, claw marks on trees near their shelter, and large paw prints in soft ground throughout their camp perimeter. The investigation appeared systematic and thorough, suggesting that an extremely intelligent predator had conducted detailed assessment of their presence, equipment, and potential food sources. The evidence indicated that their camp security had been tested by an animal of exceptional size and problem-solving ability. Marcus examined the claw marks on trees and determined that they had been made by an individual with claws significantly longer than typical bear claws measurements, consistent with an exceptionally large animal possessing proportionally massive physical features. The marks appeared fresh and had been made at heights exceeding 8 feet, indicating a bear of extraordinary size that could easily reach areas well beyond normal bear capabilities. The evidence confirmed their worst fears about the size and capabilities of the animal that had investigated their camp. Sarah documented the evidence of bear investigation with systematic photography and measurements that captured the scope and intensity of the animal's examination of their camp area. Her documentation revealed that the bear had investigated every aspect of their setup, including food storage containers, equipment caches, and shelter systems, demonstrating remarkable intelligence and thoroughness in its assessment. The investigation pattern suggested an animal with extensive experience evaluating human presence and potential opportunities. Jennifer's examination of their bear-proof food containers revealed that while the containers had not been opened, they showed obvious evidence of testing by an animal with enormous strength and persistence. Teeth marks and claw scratches indicated that the bear had attempted multiple approaches to accessing the containers, applying force that had damaged the exterior surfaces without compromising the interior seals. The damage demonstrated both the bear's intelligence in recognizing food storage and its frustration at being unable to access contents. The group's discussion of their situation revealed unanimous agreement that their safety had been compromised by the investigation of such a large and persistent bear. David argued for immediate evacuation using their satellite communication device to contact their pilot for emergency pickup, while Amanda suggested relocating their camp to a different area that might provide greater security from continued bear attention. Jennifer recommended consulting with wildlife authorities using their emergency communication capabilities to obtain expert advice on managing their situation. Marcus evaluated their options and determined that their current location had become untenable due to evidence of investigation by an exceptionally large and intelligent bear that had demonstrated both interest in their presence and problem-solving abilities that threatened their food security. His assessment emphasized that continued camping in the location would create escalating risks, as the bear's familiarity with their presence could lead to increasingly bold behavior and potential for dangerous confrontations. Around 6 p.m., the group activated their satellite communication device to contact Captain Morrison regarding emergency evacuation options, understanding that weather conditions and daylight limitations could affect pickup availability during evening hours. The communication established contact with Morrison, who indicated that current weather conditions would allow emergency pickup, but that deteriorating forecasts might prevent flight operations if they delayed beyond the following morning. His response emphasized the urgency of their decision-making regarding evacuation timing. The pilot's assessment of weather windows indicated that they could be evacuated immediately if they could reach their original pickup location within 2 hours, though transportation of their equipment would require prioritization due to weight limitations in emergency evacuation conditions. Morrison explained that their safety took precedence over equipment recovery and that gear could potentially be retrieved during subsequent flights if weather permitted return operations. His professional assessment supported immediate evacuation over continued risk exposure. Jennifer argued for immediate evacuation based on scientific risk assessment that indicated their situation had deteriorated beyond acceptable safety margins for wilderness camping in an area with documented presence of exceptionally large and investigative bears. Her analysis emphasized that their food security had been compromised and that continued presence would likely result in escalating confrontations with intelligent predators that posed serious threats to human safety. The group accepted her assessment and committed to emergency evacuation procedures. Their preparation for emergency evacuation required rapid prioritization of essential equipment and supplies, while abandoning less critical items that could not be transported within weight limitations for emergency flight operations. Marcus organized the process systematically, ensuring that safety equipment, communication devices, and irreplaceable research materials received priority, while leaving camping gear and other replaceable items for potential future recovery. The process revealed the challenges of wilderness emergency management under time pressure. Sarah compiled her research notes and documentation into portable formats that could be transported during emergency evacuation, recognizing that their scientific observations represented irreplaceable data about bear behavior and ecology in pristine conditions. Her systematic approach to data preservation ensured that their expedition would contribute to scientific understanding, despite early termination due to safety concerns. Amanda secured her most important photographs and camera equipment while preparing to abandon less critical gear. David assisted with systematic camp breakdown and equipment prioritization, applying his practical experience to ensure that essential items received transport priority while organizing abandoned equipment for potential future recovery. His efficiency and practical knowledge proved valuable for completing complex logistics under time pressure while maintaining safety standards during their evacuation preparation. The group's teamwork demonstrated their ability to function effectively under emergency conditions. Around 7:30 p.m., as they conducted final camp breakdown activities in fading daylight, their work was interrupted by David's urgent signal indicating immediate bear presence at close range. Through careful observation, they could see an enormous brown bear emerging from dense vegetation approximately 50 yards from their camp, moving with obvious purpose toward their location. The bear's size exceeded even their previous observations, with massive body proportions that confirmed this was the individual that had investigated their camp during their absence. The giant bear's approach showed no hesitation or uncertainty, suggesting familiarity with their location and confidence in investigating human presence without fear of consequences. Its enormous size became increasingly apparent as it moved through their camp perimeter, dwarfing their equipment and shelter systems through sheer physical presence. Marcus estimated the animal's weight at potentially exceeding 1,300 pounds, based on its massive body proportions and the way it dominated the landscape around their camp. Jennifer recognized immediately that their situation had escalated beyond normal bear encounter protocols, as they were confronting an animal of exceptional size and obvious intelligence that showed no fear of human presence and had demonstrated persistent interest in their location. The bear's confident approach and massive physical capabilities created a situation where normal defensive measures might prove inadequate against such a formidable predator. Her scientific background provided perspective on the unprecedented nature of their encounter. Amanda attempted to photograph the approaching giant bear while maintaining readiness for immediate defensive actions if the animal's behavior escalated toward aggression. Her telephoto lens captured images that revealed the true scale of the enormous predator, with detail that emphasized its massive head, enormous claws, and muscular development that exceeded normal parameters for even large brown bears. The photographs documented an animal that represented the absolute pinnacle of bear physical development. The bear's investigation of their camp area showed remarkable thoroughness and intelligence, as it systematically examined their equipment, food storage containers, and human scent trails with obvious understanding of what each represented. Its behavior demonstrated problem-solving abilities and persistence that exceeded typical bear intelligence, suggesting an individual with extensive experience evaluating human presence and potential opportunities. The animal's methodical approach indicated calculated assessment rather than simple curiosity. Sarah documented the bear's investigative behavior with detailed notes that captured its systematic examination techniques and obvious intelligence in evaluating different aspects of their camp setup. Her observations revealed behavior patterns that suggested extensive experience with human presence and sophisticated understanding of camp organization and food storage methods. The bear's actions indicated a level of learning and adaptation that created serious concerns about future interactions with humans. Around 8 p.m., the giant bear's attention focused specifically on their bear-proof food containers, which it began testing with increasing persistence and applied force that exceeded anything the containers had been designed to withstand. The animal's enormous strength allowed it to manipulate the heavy containers with surprising ease, applying leverage and pressure techniques that demonstrated both intelligence and physical capabilities far beyond normal bear parameters. The systematic testing revealed an animal with extensive experience attempting to access human food sources. Marcus realized that their bear-proof food storage system, which had been designed for normal-sized bears, was inadequate against an animal of such exceptional size and strength. The giant bear's testing techniques showed escalating frustration as its problem-solving abilities met resistance from container designs it had not previously encountered. The combination of exceptional physical strength and obvious intelligence created a situation where their primary food security system was failing under pressure from a predator, unlike any documented in bear safety literature. The bears' persistent efforts to access their food containers created increasing damage to the supposedly bear-proof systems with claw marks and teeth impressions that penetrated exterior surfaces and threatened interior seals. Its enormous jaws and claws applied force that exceeded container specifications, while its intelligence allowed systematic testing of different access approaches that revealed weaknesses in container design. The systematic failure of their food security emphasized their vulnerability against an animal of unprecedented capabilities. David prepared defensive equipment including bear spray devices, though he recognized that effectiveness against such a massive animal remained uncertain given its size and obvious determination to access their food supplies. His practical experience with dangerous wildlife provided perspective on the limitations of defensive tools against an animal that exceeded normal parameters for bear encounters. The group's preparation for potential defensive actions reflected their understanding that normal bear safety protocols might prove inadequate. Jennifer observed that the bear's behavior showed escalating persistence and frustration as its attempts to access food containers continued meeting resistance, creating conditions that could lead to aggressive behavior if the animal's problem-solving efforts continued failing. Her scientific understanding of animal behavior indicated that persistent frustration often led to escalated aggression, particularly in intelligent predators accustomed to solving problems through force application. The psychological dynamics created increasing danger as the bear's patience decreased. Around 8:30 p.m., their situation deteriorated dramatically when the giant bear successfully compromised one of their bear-proof food containers through application of enormous force that crushed the locking mechanism and allowed access to contents. The bear's triumph was evident in its immediate consumption of exposed food items, confirming that its persistent efforts had achieved the objective of accessing human food sources. The successful breach demonstrated that their primary security system was inadequate against an animal of such exceptional size and determination. The bear's success in accessing food created immediate escalation of their dangerous situation, as the animal had now confirmed that persistent effort could overcome their security measures and provide access to valuable food resources. Its obvious satisfaction with the food access indicated that it would likely return for additional attempts to breach their remaining containers, creating ongoing threats to their food security and personal safety. Marcus recognized that their situation had become untenable and required immediate emergency response. Amanda continued photographing the bear's food access activities while maintaining readiness for immediate evacuation if the animal's behavior escalated toward human aggression. Her documentation captured the systematic destruction of supposedly bear-proof equipment by an animal whose capabilities exceeded all design specifications and safety assumptions. The images provided evidence of bear capabilities that challenged established understanding of food storage requirements in bear country. Sarah documented the container breach with detailed observations about the bear's techniques and the failure mechanisms of their security equipment, creating records that could inform future bear safety equipment design and wilderness camping protocols. Her systematic approach to documentation continued despite the obvious personal danger, reflecting scientific training that emphasized data collection even under challenging circumstances. The information could prove valuable for improving bear safety standards and equipment specifications. The giant bear's consumption of accessed food items demonstrated feeding efficiency that reflected its enormous size and metabolic requirements, consuming quantities that would have provided several days of nutrition for their group within minutes of gaining access. Its feeding behavior showed obvious satisfaction and reinforcement that confirmed the value of persistent effort in accessing human food sources. The psychological conditioning created serious concerns about future interactions between this individual and human visitors to the area. Around 8:45 p.m., as the bear continued consuming food from the breached container, the group implemented their emergency evacuation signal using a satellite emergency beacon that would alert rescue authorities to their critical situation and GPS location. The activation represented their recognition that the situation had escalated beyond their ability to manage safely using normal wilderness camping procedures and bear encounter protocols. Marcus emphasized that their evacuation had become essential for preventing serious injury or death from continued exposure to an exceptionally dangerous predator. The emergency beacon activation initiated automated communication with rescue coordination centers that would implement emergency response procedures for their location, though actual rescue operations would depend on weather conditions, daylight availability, and aircraft readiness that could delay immediate assistance. The group understood that their beacon activation committed them to emergency evacuation, while potentially leaving them exposed to continued bear threats during the response delay period. The timing emphasized their vulnerability during transition between self-reliance and rescue operations. Jennifer recommended implementing noise-making and defensive preparation while awaiting rescue response, understanding that their emergency beacon activation would require several hours before arrival of evacuation aircraft. Her assessment emphasized that their most dangerous period would occur during continued exposure to the giant bear, while lacking mobility options that could remove them from immediate danger. The group accepted the need for sustained defensive vigilance during their most vulnerable period. David prepared their remaining bear spray devices and established fields of fire that would provide maximum effectiveness if defensive actions became necessary to prevent bear attack during their evacuation waiting period. His preparations reflected understanding that their immobile position during rescue operations would make them particularly vulnerable to aggressive behavior from a bear that had already demonstrated persistence and problem-solving abilities in accessing their resources. The defensive preparations acknowledged their limited options for managing continued bear presence. The giant bear's behavior after consuming accessed food showed continued interest in their remaining equipment and obvious intelligence in recognizing that additional food containers remained within their camp area. Its systematic investigation of other containers demonstrated learning and persistence that created escalating threats to their remaining food security and personal safety. The bear's methodical approach indicated that it would continue efforts to access additional resources regardless of human presence or defensive measures. Around 9:15 p.m., the bear's attention shifted from food containers to investigating human scent trails and equipment that carried food odors, bringing it into increasingly close proximity to their shelter areas, where group members had been attempting to maintain defensive positions. The animals' approach reduced their safety margins while demonstrating obvious confidence and lack of fear regarding human presence. Marcus recognized that their defensive position was becoming untenable as the bear's investigation brought it within dangerous proximity. Amanda's photography documented the bear's systematic investigation of their camp area, capturing images that revealed the animal's size relative to human equipment and shelter systems. Her telephoto lens allowed detailed documentation of the bear's facial expressions and body language that indicated confidence and determination in continuing its camp investigation despite human presence. The photographs provided unprecedented documentation of human-bear interactions involving an animal of exceptional size and capabilities. The bear's investigation of their equipment revealed remarkable intelligence in discriminating between items with food odors and those without, demonstrating sophisticated scent detection abilities that allowed efficient evaluation of potential food sources throughout their camp area. Its selective attention to specific items showed learning and experience that exceeded typical bear behavior patterns, suggesting an individual with extensive exposure to human camping activities and food storage methods. The sophisticated behavior patterns created serious concerns about habituation and conditioning. Sarah continued documenting the bear's behavior patterns while recognizing that their observation opportunities were occurring under circumstances that created serious personal danger for all group members. Her scientific training provided valuable perspective on animal behavior assessment, though the practical applications for immediate safety remained limited given the bear's exceptional size and obvious confidence in human presence. The research value of their observations was balanced against immediate survival requirements. Around 9:45 p.m., their situation reached crisis levels when the giant bear began testing their shelter systems with obvious intent to investigate potential food sources within their sleeping areas. The animal's enormous strength allowed it to manipulate tent guy lines and rainflies with casual ease, creating structural damage that compromised their shelter integrity while bringing the massive predator into immediate proximity to human occupants. Marcus realized that their defensive options had become limited to direct confrontation with an animal possessing overwhelming physical advantages. The bear's investigation of their shelter areas created immediate threat to group members who had been maintaining defensive positions within tent structures that provided no effective protection against an animal of such size and strength. Its casual manipulation of their camping equipment demonstrated physical capabilities that rendered normal shelter systems ineffective barriers against determined investigation. The group's vulnerability became absolute as their primary protection proved inadequate against exceptional predator capabilities. Jennifer recommended immediate implementation of noise-making and aggressive defensive postures designed to discourage further bear approach, understanding that their shelter compromise had eliminated retreat options and required direct confrontation to prevent physical contact with the enormous predator. Her assessment emphasized that passive defensive strategies had failed and that active deterrence represented their only remaining option for preventing serious injury or death. The group accepted the need for coordinated defensive actions despite obvious risks. David positioned bear spray devices for immediate deployment while coordinating defensive spacing that would provide maximum coverage against bear approach from multiple directions. His preparations acknowledged that their defensive effectiveness against such a massive animal remained uncertain, though coordinated resistance might prove sufficient to discourage continued investigation of their camp area. The defensive coordination represented their best option for surviving continued bear presence during evacuation delay periods. The giant bear's systematic destruction of their camp organization continued as it investigated tent structures and equipment caches with increasing confidence and obvious understanding that human resistance posed minimal threat to its activities. Its behavior demonstrated complete dominance of the situation through physical superiority and intelligence that had overcome all human defensive preparations. The animal's obvious comfort with human presence created escalating danger as normal deterrence methods proved ineffective. Around 10:15 p.m., the crisis escalated dramatically when the bear's investigation brought it into direct contact with Jennifer, who had been positioned near their communication equipment to maintain contact with rescue operations. The enormous animal's sudden proximity created immediate physical danger as its massive head and shoulders invaded her personal space while investigating equipment that carried food odors from previous use. Her position became untenable as the bear's presence eliminated escape routes and brought her within range of accidental injury from casual bear movements. Jennifer's calm response to extreme proximity demonstrated remarkable self-control as she avoided sudden movements that could trigger defensive responses from the massive predator while attempting to communicate her situation to other group members through subtle signals. Her scientific training provided perspective on animal behavior that emphasized non-threatening postures and gradual movement techniques designed to avoid triggering aggressive responses. The application of theoretical knowledge under life-threatening circumstances tested her ability to implement bear safety principles under maximum stress. Marcus recognized that Jennifer's position required immediate intervention to prevent accidental or intentional injury from bear contact, though any rescue attempt would necessarily involve close approach to an animal with demonstrated unpredictability and massive physical capabilities. His wilderness guiding experience provided background for emergency decision-making, though the unprecedented nature of their situation challenged all established protocols for bear encounter management. The rescue attempt would require precise coordination and timing to avoid escalating danger for all participants. Amanda documented Jennifer's crisis situation while maintaining her own defensive position, capturing photographs that revealed the true scale of human vulnerability when confronted by such an enormous predator. Her telephoto lens allowed detailed documentation of the bear's size relative to human dimensions, emphasizing the overwhelming physical disparity that created such extreme danger. The images provided unprecedented evidence of human-bear-size relationships in extreme encounter situations. David prepared to implement coordinated noise-making and movement designed to distract the bear's attention from Jennifer, while creating opportunities for her extraction from immediate danger. His defensive strategy required precise timing and coordination to avoid triggering aggressive responses that could result in serious injury to the person being rescued. The complex rescue attempt acknowledged that normal bear deterrence methods might prove inadequate against an animal of such exceptional size and confidence. The giant bear's behavior around Jennifer showed remarkable restraint, despite its obvious size and strength advantages, as the animal continued systematic investigation without showing aggressive intent toward human presence. Its casual tolerance for human proximity suggested either extensive experience with human contact or natural temperament that avoided unnecessary violence despite obvious physical dominance. The bear's peaceful intent provided narrow opportunities for managing the crisis situation without triggering defensive attacks. Around 10:30 p.m., the coordinated rescue attempt began as Marcus and David implemented systematic noise-making designed to attract the bear's attention away from Jennifer's position while creating opportunities for her gradual withdrawal from immediate danger. Their actions required careful calibration to provide sufficient distraction without triggering territorial or defensive responses that could escalate the situation beyond manageable parameters. The rescue coordination tested their teamwork and understanding of bear behavior under extreme stress conditions. Sarah documented the rescue attempt with detailed behavioral notes that captured the bear's responses to human intervention and the effectiveness of different deterrence techniques against an animal of exceptional size and obvious intelligence. Her observations revealed behavior patterns that could inform future bear safety protocols and emergency response procedures for extreme encounter situations. The systematic documentation continued despite obvious personal danger and emotional stress from witnessing friends in life-threatening circumstances. The bear's response to coordinated human intervention showed initial confusion and increased alertness as its investigation activities were interrupted by unexpected sounds and movements from multiple sources. Its enormous head swiveled between different group members as it evaluated the changed situation and determined appropriate responses to increased human activity. The animal's decision-making process became apparent through body language that revealed evaluation and assessment rather than immediate aggressive preparation. Jennifer's extraction from immediate danger required several minutes of careful movement as she gradually increased distance from the enormous predator while avoiding sudden motions that could trigger chase responses or territorial defense. Her measured withdrawal demonstrated remarkable composure under extreme stress, while implementing theoretical bear safety knowledge under life-threatening conditions. The successful extraction reflected both personal courage and effective group coordination under maximum pressure circumstances. The giant bear's tolerance for human rescue activities continued as it allowed Jennifer's withdrawal without showing aggressive pursuit or territorial defense of the area it had been investigating. Its peaceful response to human intervention suggested either extensive conditioning to human presence or natural temperament that avoided unnecessary conflict despite obvious physical advantages. The bear's restraint provided essential margins for successful rescue operations under otherwise impossible circumstances. Around 10:45 p.m., with Jennifer successfully extracted from immediate danger, the group implemented coordinated withdrawal to their predetermined emergency position, approximately 100 yards from their compromised camp area. The withdrawal required systematic movement that maintained defensive spacing while monitoring bear behavior for any indication of pursuit or territorial defense that could create additional confrontation opportunities. Marcus led the extraction with constant attention to maintaining group cohesion and defensive readiness during their most vulnerable movement period. Their emergency position provided elevated terrain and multiple escape route options while maintaining visual contact with their camp area and the giant bear that continued investigating their abandoned equipment. The location offered improved defensive advantages while ensuring that rescue aircraft could locate them when evacuation operations commenced. David established defensive perimeters and communication protocols that would ensure coordinated responses to any renewed bear approach during their extended waiting period. Amanda continued photographing the bear's ongoing investigation of their abandoned camp, obtaining images that documented the systematic destruction and consumption of their food supplies by an animal whose capabilities exceeded all established parameters for bear-proof equipment effectiveness. Her telephoto lens captured detail that revealed the bear's remarkable intelligence and problem-solving abilities in accessing resources that had been designed to resist normal bear capabilities. The documentation provided unprecedented evidence of exceptional individual bear capabilities. Sarah compiled field notes and observations from their extended encounter with the giant bear, creating comprehensive records of animal behavior and human responses that could contribute to improved bear safety protocols and equipment design standards. Her systematic documentation approach continued despite extreme stress and ongoing danger, reflecting scientific training that emphasized data collection under challenging circumstances. The records would provide valuable information for wilderness safety authorities and bear behavior researchers. Jennifer's medical assessment following her close encounter revealed elevated stress responses but no physical injuries from her proximity to the enormous predator, demonstrating the effectiveness of proper bear safety techniques and the remarkable restraint shown by an animal capable of causing serious injury through casual contact. Her successful management of extreme proximity to such a massive predator provided practical validation of bear safety training and theoretical knowledge application under life-threatening circumstances. The experience emphasized both human vulnerability and the effectiveness of proper behavioral responses. The giant bear's continued investigation of their abandoned camp showed no indication of departure or reduced interest, as the animal systematically consumed accessible food supplies while testing additional containers for potential access opportunities. Its persistent presence at their camp location created ongoing concerns about evacuation safety, as rescue aircraft operations would necessarily occur in close proximity to an unpredictable predator of exceptional size and capabilities. The bear's territorial behavior around their camp area could potentially interfere with rescue operations. Around 11:30 p.m., their emergency beacon received response confirmation from rescue coordination authorities, indicating that evacuation aircraft had been dispatched and would arrive at their location within approximately 2 hours, weather conditions permitting. The response timeline provided specific information about rescue operations, while emphasizing that aircraft approach and evacuation procedures would depend on bear behavior and safety conditions at their location. The coordination emphasized that rescue operations required careful management to avoid creating additional dangers from wildlife interactions. Marcus briefed the group on evacuation procedures and safety protocols for aircraft operations in areas with active bear presence, emphasizing that their cooperation and coordination would be essential for successful rescue completion without additional injury or equipment loss. His wilderness guiding experience provided background for managing complex emergency operations, though the presence of such an enormous and unpredictable predator created unprecedented challenges for evacuation safety. The briefing prepared group members for coordinated response during their most critical operational period. The extended waiting period provided opportunities for processing their experiences while maintaining defensive vigilance against potential renewed bear approach or territorial behavior that could threaten their evacuation safety. Group members shared observations and emotional responses to their encounter with an animal that exceeded all previous wildlife experience and challenged established understanding of bear capabilities and behavior patterns. The discussion helped manage stress while maintaining alertness for continued bear activity. David monitored weather conditions and maintained communication with incoming rescue aircraft through their satellite emergency beacon, providing updates on bear activity and ground conditions that could affect evacuation safety and operational procedures. His communication responsibilities required coordination between ground conditions and aircraft operations, while ensuring that rescue pilots received essential information about wildlife threats that could affect approach and evacuation procedures. The coordination emphasized the complexity of rescue operations under such unusual circumstances. Around midnight on August 29th, the distant sound of approaching aircraft became audible, indicating that their rescue evacuation had commenced despite challenging nighttime conditions and potential wildlife threats at their location. The aircraft approach required careful coordination with ground personnel to ensure safe landing and evacuation procedures, while managing risks from bear presence that could threaten both human safety and aircraft operations. Marcus coordinated ground preparation for aircraft reception while maintaining defensive awareness of continued bear activity. The incoming rescue aircraft, identified as a Coast Guard helicopter equipped for nighttime emergency evacuation operations in remote locations, with crew trained for managing wildlife threats and challenging landing conditions. Captain Morrison had coordinated with military rescue authorities to provide specialized evacuation capabilities that could safely extract the group despite bear presence and difficult terrain conditions. The professional rescue response demonstrated the effectiveness of emergency communication systems and inter-agency cooperation for wilderness emergency management. The helicopter's approach to their location required careful evaluation of landing zone safety and bear activity that could threaten aircraft operations or evacuation procedures. Rescue crew assessment indicated that the giant bear remained active in their camp area but had not shown aggressive responses to aircraft noise or human evacuation activities. The professional evaluation provided confidence that evacuation could proceed safely with appropriate precautions and coordination between ground personnel and aircraft crew. Jennifer gathered essential research materials and equipment for evacuation transport, prioritizing irreplaceable data and scientific observations from their expedition while abandoning camping gear and other replaceable items that could not be accommodated within emergency evacuation weight limitations. Her systematic approach to equipment prioritization ensured that their scientific work would survive, despite early expedition termination due to safety concerns. The scientific documentation represented valuable contributions to bear behavior research and wilderness safety understanding. Around 12:30 a.m. on August 29th, the helicopter established landing approach to their evacuation location, with crew coordinating ground support for rapid extraction procedures designed to minimize exposure time in an area with active bear presence. The evacuation required precise timing and coordination to ensure safe personnel transfer while maintaining aircraft operational safety in challenging conditions. Sarah gathered her expedition journal and research notes while preparing for immediate evacuation when aircraft crew signaled readiness for personnel transfer. Amanda secured her photographic equipment and essential camera gear for evacuation transport, ensuring that their wildlife documentation would survive despite abandonment of camping equipment and other expedition supplies. Her systematic approach to equipment prioritization protected irreplaceable photographic evidence of their encounters with exceptionally large bears, while accepting loss of replaceable camping gear. The photographic documentation provided unprecedented evidence of bear capabilities and behavior patterns that exceeded established scientific understanding. David assisted with final equipment organization and defensive coordination during aircraft approach operations, ensuring that group safety remained protected during the complex evacuation procedures. His practical experience proved valuable for managing multiple operational requirements simultaneously while maintaining awareness of bear activity that could threaten evacuation safety. The coordination emphasized the importance of teamwork and leadership during emergency operations under challenging circumstances. The giant bear's response to helicopter approach showed initial alertness and increased activity as aircraft noise and lighting systems created environmental changes in its territory. The enormous animal's reaction remained non-aggressive despite obvious awareness of unusual activity, suggesting either habituation to mechanical sounds or natural temperament that avoided confrontational responses to aircraft operations. The bear's peaceful response provided essential safety margins for successful evacuation completion. Marcus coordinated ground support for helicopter landing operations while maintaining communication with aircraft crew regarding bear activity and safety conditions that could affect evacuation procedures. His wilderness emergency experience provided valuable background for managing complex rescue operations under unusual circumstances, involving wildlife threats and challenging terrain conditions. The coordination ensured effective communication between ground personnel and rescue crew during critical operational periods. Around 1 a.m., the helicopter achieved successful landing with crew immediately implementing rapid evacuation procedures designed to minimize ground exposure time while ensuring safe personnel transfer from the dangerous location. The professional rescue operation demonstrated remarkable efficiency and coordination, despite challenging nighttime conditions and potential wildlife threats that could have complicated normal evacuation procedures. Group members responded with disciplined cooperation that facilitated smooth evacuation operations. The evacuation process required systematic personnel transfer with essential equipment while abandoning camping gear and other expedition supplies that could not be accommodated within aircraft weight and space limitations. Each group member prioritized irreplaceable personal items and scientific materials while accepting loss of camping equipment that could be replaced following their successful rescue. The prioritization reflected understanding of survival requirements versus material considerations during emergency evacuation operations. Jennifer's transfer to the aircraft included transport of essential research materials and scientific documentation that represented irreplaceable evidence of their wildlife observations and ecosystem studies. Her systematic approach to scientific data preservation ensured that their expedition would contribute to bear behavior research and wilderness safety understanding, despite early termination due to safety concerns. The scientific value of their observations provided meaning and purpose beyond the emergency circumstances that required evacuation. Sarah's evacuation included transport of her comprehensive expedition journal and research notes that documented their daily activities, wildlife observations, and environmental conditions throughout their wilderness experience. Her detailed documentation provided narrative records that complemented scientific data and photographic evidence to create comprehensive expedition records. The journal represented valuable documentation of wilderness experience and bear behavior that could inform future research and safety protocols. Amanda's evacuation prioritized photographic equipment, and essential camera gear that contained irreplaceable documentation of their wildlife encounters and bear behavior observations. Her systematic approach to equipment protection ensured that unprecedented photographic evidence of exceptionally large bears would survive for scientific analysis and public education purposes. The images provided visual documentation that complemented written records and contributed to comprehensive expedition documentation. David's transfer included navigation equipment and communication devices that had proven essential for their expedition safety and emergency rescue coordination. His practical approach to equipment prioritization reflected understanding of survival requirements and emergency management principles that had contributed to successful group coordination throughout their wilderness experience. The equipment selection emphasized practical considerations for wilderness safety and emergency preparedness. Around 1:30 a.m., the helicopter evacuation achieved successful completion, with all group members safely aboard and aircraft departing the area, while the giant bear continued investigating their abandoned camp equipment. The rescue operation represented remarkable professional competence and interagency coordination that had extracted them from life-threatening circumstances involving an exceptionally dangerous predator. Their successful evacuation provided opportunities for processing their experiences while ensuring their physical safety and psychological recovery. The flight from their evacuation site to medical facilities in Kodiak provided time for initial processing of their traumatic experiences while ensuring access to professional medical evaluation and psychological support services. The rescue crew included emergency medical technicians trained for managing stress responses and potential injuries from wilderness emergency situations. Group members received preliminary medical assessment during transport while beginning emotional processing of their encounter with an animal that had exceeded all previous wildlife experience. Marcus reflected on the expedition's early termination and the decision-making processes that had ensured group safety despite encountering circumstances that exceeded all established parameters for bear encounter management. His wilderness guiding experience provided perspective on the unprecedented nature of their situation and the effectiveness of emergency protocols that had prevented serious injury or death. The successful group coordination and emergency response demonstrated the value of preparation and training for wilderness emergency management. Jennifer began preliminary analysis of their scientific observations and research data collected during their encounter with exceptionally large bears that had provided unprecedented insights into bear behavior and capabilities. Her scientific training allowed systematic evaluation of their wildlife observations while processing the emotional impact of experiencing such extreme circumstances. The research value of their documentation provided purpose and meaning that helped manage traumatic stress from their life-threatening encounter. The helicopter's arrival in Kodiak around 2:15 a.m. marked their transition from wilderness emergency to medical evaluation and psychological support services provided by professional emergency response personnel. The medical assessment revealed elevated stress responses but no serious physical injuries from their encounter with the giant bear, demonstrating the effectiveness of proper bear safety techniques and group coordination under extreme circumstances. Their successful survival provided validation of wilderness training and emergency preparedness. Amanda's photographic documentation of their bear encounters began attracting immediate attention from wildlife authorities and bear behavior researchers who recognized the unprecedented nature of their evidence, showing bears that exceeded established size parameters for the subspecies. Her images provided visual proof of animal capabilities that challenged scientific understanding while contributing to improved bear safety protocols and equipment design standards. The documentation represented valuable contributions to wildlife research and public safety education. Sarah's detailed expedition journal attracted attention from wilderness safety authorities and bear behavior researchers who recognized the comprehensive nature of her behavioral observations and environmental documentation. Her systematic approach to record-keeping had created valuable scientific data that could inform future research and safety protocols for wilderness travel in bear habitat. The journal represented unprecedented documentation of human-bear interactions involving animals of exceptional size and intelligence. The media attention surrounding their expedition and emergency evacuation emphasized the public interest in wilderness safety and wildlife conservation issues that their experience had highlighted. Their documentation of exceptionally large bears challenged established understanding while contributing to improved safety protocols and equipment standards for wilderness travelers. The public education value of their experience extended beyond personal survival to contribute to broader understanding of wildlife conservation and human-bear coexistence. Dr. William Holbrook's analysis of their photographic and observational evidence confirmed that they had encountered individuals that exceeded all previous documentation for Kodiak brown bear size parameters, with the giant bear potentially representing the largest wild bear ever scientifically documented. His professional assessment validated their observations while contributing to revised understanding of bear ecology and physical development potential under optimal environmental conditions. The scientific significance of their documentation justified the risks they had accepted during their wilderness expedition. The investigation by Alaska Department of Fish and Game Wildlife authorities resulted in enhanced monitoring and research protocols for the Larsen Bay area, with particular attention to the exceptional individuals they had documented during their expedition. Their evidence contributed to improved understanding of bear population dynamics and habitat requirements, while informing management decisions for wilderness areas that supported such exceptional wildlife. The conservation implications of their work extended beyond personal experience to contribute to species protection and habitat preservation. Jennifer's recovery from their traumatic experience included professional counseling and gradual return to wildlife research activities that built upon the scientific knowledge gained during their expedition. Her systematic approach to processing both scientific data and emotional responses demonstrated resilience and professional commitment that transformed traumatic experience into valuable contributions to wildlife science. The integration of personal experience with scientific analysis provided unique perspectives on human-wildlife interactions and conservation challenges. Marcus's evaluation of their emergency response and evacuation procedures resulted in revised protocols for wilderness, guiding in areas with exceptional wildlife threats, incorporating lessons learned from their encounter with animals that exceeded normal safety parameters. His professional development included enhanced training for managing extreme wildlife encounters while maintaining client safety under unprecedented circumstances. The experience contributed to improved wilderness guiding standards and emergency response protocols. Sarah's continued research and writing about their expedition experience resulted in comprehensive documentation that contributed to wilderness safety education and bear behavior understanding for both scientific and public audiences. Her detailed accounts provided valuable information for future wilderness travelers while contributing to improved safety protocols and equipment standards. The educational value of their experience extended beyond personal survival to benefit broader wilderness conservation and safety communities. Amanda's photographic documentation continued attracting scientific and public attention for its unprecedented evidence of bear capabilities and human-wildlife interactions under extreme circumstances. Her images contributed to wildlife research while providing public education about conservation challenges and the remarkable capabilities of wildlife in pristine ecosystems. The visual documentation complemented scientific research and contributed to broader understanding of wildlife conservation requirements. David's practical experience and survival skills contributed to development of improved equipment and safety protocols for wilderness travel in areas with exceptional wildlife threats. His insights informed equipment design and safety training programs while contributing to broader understanding of practical wilderness survival techniques. The experience provided valuable lessons for wilderness emergency preparedness and equipment effectiveness under extreme conditions. The long-term implications of their expedition included enhanced scientific understanding of bear behavior and ecology, improved safety protocols for wilderness travel, and increased public awareness of wildlife conservation challenges in pristine ecosystems. Their documentation of exceptional individual bears contributed to species research while informing management decisions for critical habitat protection. The experience demonstrated both the remarkable capabilities of wildlife and the importance of wilderness conservation for maintaining ecosystem integrity that supported such exceptional animals. Their survival and successful documentation of encounters with exceptionally large bears represented triumph of human preparation, teamwork, and scientific curiosity, despite facing circumstances that tested the limits of wilderness safety protocols and bear encounter management. The experience provided valuable lessons for future wilderness travelers while contributing to scientific understanding and conservation efforts that protected critical wildlife habitat. Their expedition became a landmark case study in wilderness safety, wildlife research, and human-bear interactions that influenced protocols and understanding for years to come.